Section 1. The Hollow Road. The storm struck the mountains as if it had been waiting for her. Elara's battered jeep sputtered, coughed, and gave up on the winding road that cut through the hollow range. She sat gripping the wheel, staring through a windshield streaked with furious snow. The heater had died with the engine, leaving her wrapped in her thin coat, teeth already chattering. Of course, she thought bitterly. Of course, this is how the month ends. She'd left behind a life in ruins, a fiancé who had traded her love for someone else's bed, a job she'd fought for and lost in the same week, friends who chose silence over loyalty. Even her mother had said, softly, guiltily, maybe some distance will help you figure yourself out. So Elara had pointed her jeep toward the tiny town of Duskborn, population 912, a dot on the map tucked in the folds of Montana wilderness. She'd found a job offer at the town's archives, a place where old books slept under dust. It had seemed perfect. Remote. Quiet. A chance to rebuild. But not if she froze to death on this cursed road first. Her phone was useless, no signal bars, just a blinking battery at 12%. Outside, the snow fell in choking curtains. The wind's scream sounded almost alive, like a voice howling for her. She pressed her forehead to the steering wheel. Great. First heartbreak, then unemployment. Now hypothermia. Wonderful, resume Elara. A sound cut through the storm. At first she thought it was a trick of the wind, but no, the crunch of footsteps in the snow. Heavy. Measured. Coming closer. Elara's breath caught. Nobody sane would be out here. Which meant whoever was walking toward her wasn't sane. Or wasn't human. The stories she'd skimmed online about the hollow range clawed at her memory, legends of creatures that wore human skins, but were more than human. Predators who claimed the night. She'd laughed at them then. Now she wasn't laughing. A shadow brushed past her fogged window. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Moving with a predator's fluidity. Her pulse hammered. A knock on her window made her yelp. Hey! The voice was deep, rough, but oddly gentle. You all right in there? Elara froze. Every survival instinct screamed not to answer. But the cold pressed in, gnawing through her coat. If she stayed, she'd be a frozen statue by morning. She lowered the window just enough to speak. Car died. A pause. Then I figured. How long? Half an hour. Maybe more. Are you from around here? Close enough. His tone carried a faint amusement. But you won't make it to town. Roads are closed. I've got a cabin nearby. Safer than sitting here waiting to freeze. The cabin line. Classic horror movie bait. How do I know you're not dangerous? She asked, trying for levity but failing. A low chuckle. It slid over her nerves like velvet and steel. Fair question. You don't. A metallic tap on the window made her glance down. A hunting knife in a leather sheath. Here. You keep this. If I try anything, use it. Who in their right mind handed over a weapon to a stranger? Either a madman, or someone terrifyingly confident. Elara swallowed. Her choices were bleak. Trust him, or freeze. Slowly, she nodded. Fine. But I'm keeping the knife. Wouldn't expect otherwise. She shoved her bag over her shoulder, opened the door, and was immediately slapped by wind so cold it stole her breath. Her knees wobbled on the slick ice, but a hand closed firmly around her arm, steadying her. Stay close, the stranger said. She looked up and froze. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with hair as dark as midnight snow and eyes that caught the storm's faint light in a way no human eyes should. His face was all sharp lines, beautiful in a dangerous way. His heavy coat did little to disguise the strength beneath. He moved through the blizzard like it bowed to him. I'm Lucien, he said over the roar of the storm. Elara, she whispered. And so she followed him, deeper into the snow, toward a cabin that might mean salvation, or something far stranger. Section 2. The Cabin in the Pines. The storm seemed endless, but Lucien guided her with the certainty of someone who could read the forest blindfolded. His grip was strong yet careful. Every time she stumbled, he steadied her without hesitation. Snow piled to her knees, her boots slipped, but he never faltered. How can you see anything in this? Elara called over the wind. I don't see, Lucien replied, his tone unreadable. I know the path. That didn't make sense. Nothing about this did. But before she could ask more, a shape loomed through the storm. A cabin, larger than she expected, built of dark timber with smoke curling from the stone chimney. Golden light glowed behind frosted windows like a promise. By the time they reached the porch, Elara's legs shook from exhaustion. Lucien pulled the heavy door open, and warmth spilled out like a living thing. She nearly sagged with relief as she stepped inside. The interior was rustic but striking. Exposed beams, a great stone fireplace roaring with fire, the faint scent of pine resin, and something richer, like earth after rain mixed with iron. It was intoxicating. Upstairs, Lucien said, shedding his snow-soaked coat with a graceful motion that made Elara's pulse skip. There's a washroom. Get out of those clothes before they freeze on you. I'll find something dry. She hesitated. Every caution screamed that she was alone with a stranger in a remote cabin. But her clothes were stiff with icy water, and the heat inside only made her shivering worse. Go, Lucien urged gently, his eyes briefly softening. You'll catch your death otherwise. Elara nodded and climbed the narrow staircase. The washroom was small but clean, with steam rising from a basin he must have filled in advance. She stripped quickly, rubbing her numb skin with a towel until it burned with returning sensation. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, pale cheeks, lips tinged blue, hair plastered to her skull, she looked like a survivor of some shipwreck. When she descended wrapped in the towel, clothes awaited on the sofa, thick wool socks, soft flannel pants, and a long shirt that smelled faintly of pine and smoke, and something darker she couldn't name. Thank you, she called, dressing quickly. From the kitchen came the clatter of pans and the hiss of something cooking. Coffee will be ready in a minute, Lucien's voice answered. Elara tugged the oversized shirt over her shoulders. It hung to her knees. She pressed the fabric to her face, breathing in that strange scent. It made her dizzy in a way that wasn't entirely unpleasant. When she entered the kitchen, she found Lucien at the stove. He'd changed into dry clothes as well, dark trousers and a thermal shirt that clung to his shoulders and chest. His black hair was damp, glistening like midnight water. You cook too? Elara said, surprised. His lips curved faintly, the hint of a smile. I do many things. The coffee smelled like heaven. She cradled the steaming mug, letting the warmth seep into her hands. For the first time since her life collapsed, she felt something like peace. But when she glanced up, Lucien wasn't eating. He was watching her, eyes burning with an intensity that made her shiver for reasons that had nothing to do with the storm. Section 3. Breakfast and Questions. Elara blew across the rim of her mug, the rich scent of roasted beans curling into her lungs. The coffee was strong, almost bitter, but it jolted warmth back into her bones. Lucien slid a plate in front of her, eggs, bread still warm from a skillet, slices of venison that smelled smoky and wild. You didn't have to, she said, though her stomach growled like a traitor. I was cooking anyway, he answered smoothly, settling across from her. Yet he barely touched his food. His attention stayed fixed on her as though she were the only thing in the room that mattered. Elara shifted in her chair, self-conscious. You're not eating. I will. His gaze didn't waver. After. She picked at the bread, suddenly unsure if she should keep chewing under the weight of those eyes. They were dark, too dark, and yet every flicker of firelight caught them strangely, as though a glow lived beneath the surface. To be clear, she said carefully, I don't normally follow strangers into cabins in the woods. Just, so you know. A sound rumbled from his chest, half laugh, half growl. I imagine not. And I'm grateful, she added quickly, embarrassed by her own defensiveness. If you hadn't found me, I'd still be in that car freezing. Lucien's expression softened slightly. You wouldn't have survived the night. The storm here shows no mercy. That sent a ripple through her, part fear, part something she couldn't name. So how did you find me? His jaw flexed. I heard the engine die. In the middle of a blizzard? She raised an eyebrow. I could barely hear myself think. Lucien's gaze didn't shift. Sound carries differently in storms. If you know how to listen. It was an answer, but not a satisfying one. Elara had lived through enough lies, too many easy excuses, too many convenient half-truths to recognize when someone was dodging. Still, she let it go. For now. Instead, she asked, "Do you live here alone?" "Most of the time." He leaned back in his chair, still studying her. "Family comes and goes. I prefer solitude." She nodded slowly. "I thought I did, too. Until it all caught up with me." Lucien tilted his head, interest sharpening. "Caught up?" Elara hesitated. She hadn't meant to open that door, but his voice carried something that urged her to speak. "I left Chicago. Left everything, really. My fiancé. My job. My so-called friends. All of it gone in 1 month." The fire popped in the hearth, filling the silence. Lucien's eyes darkened further. "He hurt you." The certainty in his tones startled her. Not with fists, if that's what you mean. Just lies. Betrayal. Loud fights that left me shaking. I thought I could fix it if I just tried harder. Not your fault." His voice cut like steel. "Never your fault." Elara blinked. Nobody had said that to her. Not her family, not her therapist, not even herself. For a moment, she let the warmth of his conviction settle in her chest. But the intensity behind his words made something else stir: curiosity, unease, attraction tangled into a single knot. "Lucien," she asked softly, "what are you?" For a heartbeat, the cabin went utterly silent. His eyes caught the firelight, gleaming, not brown, not black, but a molten, impossible shade like blood kissed with gold. And then he looked away. "Eat," he said, his tone final. "You'll need your strength." Section 4. Shadows in the Cabin. Elara obeyed, finishing what she could of the meal, though her appetite had tangled itself into knots. Lucien's refusal to answer had left the air charged, heavy with something unspoken. When she finally set down her fork, he rose without a word, moving with that smooth, predatory grace that seemed too deliberate to belong to any ordinary man. "I need to check the generator," he said, pulling on a thick coat. "The storm might cut the lines. Make yourself at home." And then he was gone, the door shutting softly behind him. The cabin felt different in his absence, larger, quieter, yet still humming with the echo of his presence. Elara wrapped the oversized flannel tighter around herself and wandered through the main room. Books lined the shelves in uneven stacks. She traced a finger across the spines: history, folklore, natural sciences. But mixed among them were titles that made her pause. Bloodlines of the Undying. Lupin Transformation in Northern Clans. Treatises on Nocturnal Predators. She pulled one at random, the pages marked with handwritten notes in a sharp, precise script. Latin phrases, diagrams of creatures with elongated limbs, eyes like lanterns. Her heart beat faster as she shoved it back into place. "Just a hobby," she whispered to herself, though the words sounded weak. Something else caught her eye, a framed photograph wedged between books. She slid it out carefully. It showed Lucien, younger, standing with a group outside the very cabin she stood in. They all shared that same unsettling beauty, tall, sharp-boned, their eyes catching the light unnaturally even in the old print. Behind them, in the snow, paw prints, massive, clawed, impossible for any normal animal. Elara's stomach tightened. She set the photo back hastily, nerves prickling. A sound drifted through the cabin. Not the crackle of fire. Not the moan of wind. Something lower. Rhythmic. Almost like breathing. She turned, pulse hammering. The windows were fogged with condensation, the storm beyond a blur of white. But outside, yes, she was certain now, footsteps crunched in the snow. Her hand went instinctively to the knife Lucien had given her. The leather sheath felt strangely comforting against her palm. The footsteps paused near the window. A shadow shifted against the glass. For one long moment, she thought she saw eyes glowing faintly, catching the dim light like coals. And then, just as suddenly, the shadow vanished. The door creaked open, and Elara nearly jumped out of her skin. Lucien stepped back inside, brushing snow from his shoulders. His dark hair gleamed wet, and there was something in the way he filled the doorway, like the storm itself bowed to let him pass. "You're pale," he observed, closing the door with a final click. "What happened?" Elara hesitated. "Tell him? Pretend?" "I thought I saw something," she said slowly. Outside the window. Lucien's gaze sharpened, though his expression remained calm. "Describe it." "Eyes. Watching me." Her voice shook despite her effort to sound steady. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face, recognition, almost relief, before he masked it. "You're safe here," he said finally, voice low and sure. "Nothing crosses this threshold without my consent." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they raised 100 new questions. Section 5, Cracks in the Mask. Elara couldn't stop staring at him. The way he said nothing crosses this threshold without my consent, as if it were law, not reassurance. "Lucien," she began carefully, "what exactly does that mean?" He set his gloves on the mantel, his movements too precise, too deliberate. "It means you're safe," he repeated. "That's not an answer." Her voice trembled, but she didn't let it falter. "I saw eyes out there. Glowing. That wasn't just a stray animal, was it?" Lucien finally turned toward her. For the first time since she'd met him, he didn't look like a man trying to soothe her fears. He looked cornered. "You're asking questions you may not want the answers to. I've lived through betrayal, humiliation, losing everything I thought I knew," Elara said, surprising even herself with the force in her voice. "I can handle the truth." For a long moment, silence stretched. The fire hissed in the hearth. Snow hammered against the cabin walls. Lucien stepped closer. His eyes, dark, fathomless, caught the light again, and for an instant, she swore they flashed crimson, like embers stoked to life. "Vampire," he said at last, the word heavy as stone. Then, after a heartbeat, "and wolf." Elara blinked. The rational part of her brain scoffed, impossible, ridiculous. Yet, something deep inside whispered that it explained everything. His unnatural grace. The way he'd found her in the storm. The predatory intensity she'd felt even in his kindness. "You're joking." Her voice was thin. Lucien's lips curved, but there was no humor in it. "Do I look like a man who jokes?" She thought of the books on his shelves. The photo with those inhuman eyes. The way her skin prickled when he was near. "No," she admitted softly. He stepped closer still, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, though she knew he wasn't entirely human warmth. "I shouldn't have brought you here," he said, his voice rough, almost pained. "The storm forced my hand, but you don't belong in this world. It will devour you." Elara's fingers curled around the knife hilt at her side, not in fear, but as if anchoring herself. "And yet you saved me." Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The fire popped behind them, casting shifting light across his sharp features. "Yes," Lucien whispered, almost to himself. "I did." His voice carried something she couldn't name, a hunger, yes, but tangled with something gentler, almost reverent. The air between them felt like the instant before lightning struck. Section 6, The Pull Between Them. Elara's heartbeat thundered in her ears. The storm outside might as well have disappeared. All she felt was the weight of Lucien's presence pressing in on her. "Why tell me at all?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You could have lied. You could have let me think I was imagining things." Lucien's joy tightened. "Because you deserve truth more than lies." And because, his gaze dropped briefly to her lips, then snapped back to her eyes. "Because I can't seem to stop myself." Heat spread through her, startling in its intensity. It wasn't fear, not entirely. It was the strange, reckless awareness she'd felt since the moment she opened her car door and saw him standing in the storm. "You're dangerous," she said. "Yes." His agreement was immediate, almost savage. "Every part of me is built to hunt. To claim. To take." His voice lowered to a rasp. "And yet all I want is to protect you." The confession made her throat tighten. She should step back. Put distance between them. But her feet stayed rooted, and the space between them shrank with every breath. Lucien's hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, trembling slightly as though he were holding himself on the edge of restraint. "If I touch you," he said, "there will be no undoing it." Her pulse leapt. "Then don't hold back." Something in his composure cracked. With a low, rough sound, his fingers brushed her skin. They were warm, warmer than she expected. The simple contact sent a shock through her, like electricity racing her veins. "Elara," he murmured, her name reverent, dangerous, intimate. She leaned into his palm before she could stop herself. "You keep saying you're a threat," she whispered, "but I've never felt safer than I do right now." His eyes burned brighter, red flaring against gold, a molten storm of hunger. "You don't understand what I am. Then show me." For a long moment, he wrestled with himself, every line of his body taut with conflict. And then, as though the dam shattered, he closed the final distance and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was fire meeting storm, hunger meeting hunger. His mouth claimed hers with a desperation that stole her breath, and she met it with equal ferocity. There was no thought of danger, no memory of betrayal, no echo of fear, only the raw, undeniable truth of the connection sparking between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "This is a mistake," Lucien said hoarsely. "Probably," Elara admitted, her lips tingling, her body alight. "But I'm tired of playing safe." He closed his eyes as though her words cut deeper than any blade. "You have no idea the storm you've just stepped into." "And you," she whispered, "have no idea how ready I am." Section 7. The Predator Beneath. The kiss still burned on Elara's lips, echoing in every nerve. She had kissed men before, sweet, clumsy, passionate, but nothing like this. Lucien's kiss felt like surrender and claim all at once, as though he'd poured something of himself into her and stolen something from her in return. But when he pulled back, the man who had been holding her so tenderly wasn't the same. His chest rose and fell too fast, his pupils blown wide. And when the firelight shifted, she saw them fangs, unmistakably sharp, catching the glow. Elara froze. "Lucien." He turned away sharply, running a hand through his hair as though trying to scrub the moment from existence. "This is what I meant. What I've been trying to keep from you." Her breath trembled, but she stepped closer anyway. "You're part vampire." "Part," he confirmed bitterly. "And part wolf." The words hung between them, absurd and terrifying, and yet the evidence was right there. The flash of teeth. The unnatural glow in his eyes. The way he moved, the way he'd found her, the way her instincts screamed predator and protector in the same breath. He leaned against the mantel, gripping it so hard the wood groaned. "You don't know what it costs me to stand this close without," he broke off, shaking his head. "Without what?" she pressed softly. His eyes snapped to hers. Red and gold churned together, molten and feral. "Without tasting you." The raw honesty should have chilled her, but instead heat rushed through her. Every warning bell inside her screamed danger, yet another voice, quieter, more reckless, whispered, "He won't hurt you." "You saved me," she said. "You could have left me to freeze. If all you wanted was blood." "You don't understand," he cut in, voice ragged. "It isn't just blood." He stepped closer before she could move, towering over her with a presence that filled the room. "It's everything. Soul. Flesh. Bond. Once I take, there is no going back." Her pulse quickened, fear and fascination twining tight. "Then why hold back?" His hands curled into fists at his sides, trembling. "Because you deserve a choice. Not chains born from hunger." For a long moment, silence reigned. Snow battered the cabin walls. The fire popped, throwing sparks. Elara lifted her chin, meeting his impossible gaze. "I've been living in chains for years, Lucien. Lies. Expectations. Fear. Maybe it's time I chose something else." His breath caught, sharp, disbelieving. And in that heartbeat, Elara realized something. He wasn't afraid of hurting her. He was afraid of needing her. Section 8. The Storm Within. The storm raged harder as night deepened. Snow battered the cabin with relentless fists, rattling the shutters, seeping cold into the corners. Elara sat curled in the armchair, blanket wrapped tight, but her eyes stayed locked on Lucien. He paced like a caged animal, every movement taut, his shoulders tight, his breathing shallow. The fire painted him in shifting shadows, sometimes man, sometimes something else, something that didn't belong to any single world. "You should sleep," he muttered, his voice low, rough. "Tomorrow, the roads might clear. I'll take you to town." "And leave you behind?" she asked quietly. His head snapped up, eyes burning. Yes, the word was sharp enough to cut. But it rang false, like an order given against his own will. Elara rose, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "You don't want me gone." His laugh was bitter, almost broken. "Want has nothing to do with it." Another gust slammed against the cabin. The windows trembled. And with it came something else, a low, mournful howl rolling across the trees. Elara stiffened, recognizing the sound she'd heard earlier. Lucien's entire body reacted. His back arched, muscles trembling as though the sound reached inside him and pulled. His hands gripped the back of a chair, splintering the wood beneath his fingers. "Lucien? Stay back," he ground out. His voice had deepened, thickened, laced with something not human. But she stepped forward anyway, helpless to stop herself. "What's happening?" He lifted his face toward her, and her breath hitched. His features were shifting, the sharpness of his cheekbones more pronounced, the pupils of his eyes swallowing the gold, leaving a ring of crimson glow. His canines had lengthened, flashing when he spoke. "The wolf," he rasped. "The vampire. Both claw at me. The storm makes it worse. The howl calls." He staggered a step back, as if retreating from her scent. "And you," his chest heaved. "You make it unbearable." Instead of fear, Elara felt a surge of something else. Pity. Understanding. Heat. He was dangerous, yes, but every line of his body screamed restraint, agony, not malice. She dared one more step. "Then don't fight it alone." He growled, a sound not human, vibrating through the floorboards. His eyes locked on her throat, hunger raw, feral. For a heartbeat, Elara thought he'd lose control completely. But he turned away at the last second, slamming a fist into the log wall, wood cracking beneath the blow. "I won't hurt you," he said, voice torn, beast and man warring in every syllable. "Even if it kills me." Section 9. Testing the monster. Elara's heart slammed against her ribs. The cabin smelled of smoke, pine, and something else, something wild and metallic that clung to Lucien like a second skin. His body was still braced against the wall, shoulders shuddering, every breath a battle. She should run. Any sane woman would bolt, barricade herself in the washroom, pray the storm out. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped forward. Lucien's head snapped toward her, eyes blazing red rimmed with molten gold. A growl built in his chest, deep and warning. "Elara. Stop." No, her voice shook, but she held her ground. "You keep telling me you're a monster. But everything you've done says the opposite. You pulled me from the snow. You fed me. You fought yourself every second just to keep me safe. That's not what monsters do." His lips peeled back over his fangs, not in a smile but in torment. "You don't understand what it costs me to be near you." "Then let me understand," she whispered. The storm howled outside, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside the cabin. Lucien's body convulsed as though two beings tore at him from within. His fingernails lengthened into dark claws, scoring deep grooves into the wood. The air around him seemed to thrum with primal energy. "Elara," he snarled, dropping to one knee as if bowing to some unseen force. His voice was distorted, two tones overlapping, human and something more. "If I shift now, I can't promise." "You saved me once," she interrupted, her breath fogging in the firelight. She dropped the blanket and knelt in front of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his trembling frame. "Do it again. Save me from the fear you think I should feel." His gaze burned into her, an inferno caged in flesh. "You're not afraid of me?" "I should be." Her pulse raced so loud she knew he could hear it. "But I'm not." A sound tore from his throat, half growl, half groan. His hand lashed out, claws inches from her skin, but instead of tearing, he slammed his palm flat against the floor beside her. The wood splintered under his strength. "I could kill you in a heartbeat," he rasped, every word guttural. She reached up, daring to touch his face, her palm against fever-hot skin. His jaw was sharp beneath her hand, trembling with restraint. "Or you could trust me in one." The growl in his chest broke, shaking into something almost like a laugh, raw, disbelieving, edged with pain. His eyes flickered between crimson hunger and golden control. "God help me," Lucien whispered. "You're either the bravest soul I've ever known, or the most foolish." "Maybe both," Elara murmured, refusing to pull her hand away. For the first time, he didn't retreat. He let her touch anchor him, even as the storm clawed louder, demanding the beast inside him break free. Section 10. The Hybrid Unveiled. The fire crackled, but the sound was drowned by the thunder in Lucien's chest. His body jerked again, the war between man, wolf, and vampire straining to shatter him. Elara stayed kneeling before him, her hand still cupping his burning cheek. Then the change began. His shoulders broadened, muscles tearing his shirt at the seams. Claws lengthened fully now, black and curved, gleaming in the firelight. The bones of his face shifted subtly, cheekbones sharpening, jaw lengthening just enough to hold teeth too long, too cruel for any human mouth. His eyes glowed outright, molten gold haloed with red, predatory and mesmerizing. Elara's breath caught. He was terrible. He was magnificent. Lucien's voice came ragged, distorted. "This is what I am." She should have recoiled. Every instinct screamed predator, danger, death. But beneath it she saw the man. Saw the tremor of restraint in the way his claws dug into the floor instead of her skin, the desperation in his eyes as though begging her to flee. "You're not a nightmare," she whispered. "You're still you." His head snapped up sharply, a growl vibrating the floorboards. "You don't understand." "Then make me," Elara said. Her voice shook but didn't break. "Show me what you fear, I'll see." He bared his fangs, crimson gaze locked on the pulse in her throat. Hunger rippled through him so raw she swore, she felt it brush her skin like heat. Slowly, deliberately, Elara tilted her head back, exposing her neck. Lucien roared and wrenched away, slamming his fist into the stone hearth. The fire spat sparks as rock cracked under the blow. His body shook as if pulling itself in two. "You tempt death," he snarled, his voice a double echo. "You call it death," she said softly. "I call it trust." Silence followed, taut and breathless. The storm outside screamed, the fire hissed, but in the space between them, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Finally, Lucien's monstrous form stilled. His claws retracted an inch. His fangs no longer gleamed quite so fiercely. And his voice, though still edged with the beast, lowered into something achingly human. "No one," he said hoarsely, "has ever looked at me like that. Not with fear. With faith." Elara's chest tightened. "Maybe that's because no one else has seen you the way I do." His laugh came rough, pained, but real. "You are madness." "Maybe." She smiled faintly despite her racing heart. "But you're the one who dragged me out of a storm, Lucien. You started this." He lowered his head, eyes glowing less fiercely now, though the monster still lingered just beneath the surface. "And I don't know how to stop." "Then don't." For the first time, Lucien let his hybrid form linger in the open, not hidden, not restrained. Standing before her as both predator and protector, both vampire and wolf, both danger and salvation. And Elara didn't flinch. Section 11. The Bond Spoken. Lucien stood before her, monstrous and magnificent, his hybrid form still flickering across the edges of his frame. The firelight carved shadows over his sharpened jaw, his eyes molten pools of gold and crimson, his body trembling as though every muscle fought itself. Elara remained kneeling, her hand still lifted, though he hadn't allowed her to touch him again. She didn't lower it. She wouldn't. Finally, he sank down onto one knee, bringing himself closer to her height. The wood beneath him creaked under his weight. "You should be running from me," he rasped. "But you stay. Because you saved me." His lips curled, not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. "A debt does not buy faith." "Maybe not," she said, her voice steadying as the words took shape. But what I see when I look at you isn't just hunger. It's control. Pain. Choice. If you wanted me dead, Lucien, you would have left me in the snow. Or worse, you wouldn't be fighting yourself now. Something broke in his expression, a crack in the iron mask. His claws shortened further, his shoulders slumped. The wolf and the vampire were still there, coiled beneath the surface, but the man was stronger for the moment. You don't understand what you're inviting, he murmured, his gaze burning into her. I am bound by instincts not of my choosing. Wolf demands pack, dominance, mate. Vampire demands blood, closeness, eternity. Together they tear me in two. The word mate lodged itself in her chest, heavy and startling. She forced her voice not to falter. And what do you want? His answer came without hesitation. You. The air seemed to shiver between them, thick and fragile. Elara's breath hitched. You barely know me. I knew the instant I scented your fear in the storm. It was like being struck. The wolf called you mine. The vampire whispered eternity. The man, he closed his eyes, voice softening into something achingly human. The man is already lost to you. Her throat tightened. That sounds a lot like chains, Lucien. Not choice. His eyes opened again, molten and tortured. It could be chains. Unless you choose it too. That's what terrifies me most, giving you the choice, knowing you might walk away. For a long moment, the storm was the only voice. Elara's mind spun, her old life, shattered and small, tugged faintly at her. Safety, normalcy, predictability. But here, in the glow of firelight and the shadow of a monster who trembled just to keep from hurting her, she felt more alive than she had in years. Slowly, she reached for his hand. His claws had mostly receded, but not entirely. Her fingers slid over his, unflinching. What if I told you? I don't want safe anymore? His breath caught, sharp, disbelieving. You'd be damning yourself, he whispered. Or saving myself, she said. And for the first time since his mask cracked, Lucien let out something close to a laugh, low, raw, but edged with wonder. You are fire, he murmured. And fire consumes everything it touches. Section 12. Eyes in the Dark. The storm still battered the cabin, but its fury was lessening. The howling wind gave way to a restless silence, the kind that carried secrets. Elara had settled beside the fire, Lucien across from her, his body now steady, his monstrous features faded back into their human guise, though the memory of what she had seen lingered, thrumming in her chest like a second heartbeat. For a while, neither spoke. The fire popped, filling the space between them. Elara traced the lines in the blanket draped over her lap, while Lucien stared into the flames as though searching for an answer in the shifting embers. You said wolf demands pack, she finally murmured. Does that mean you're not alone out here? His jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. Then, in a low, reluctant voice, no. I am not the only one. Her pulse quickened. And they're like you? Not exactly. His eyes lifted to hers, sharp and haunted. Some are more wolf. Others more vampire. Few are balanced. Most are dangerous. She swallowed, remembering the glowing eyes she'd seen at the window. And they know about me. Lucien nodded once. They know something brought me into the storm. They will scent you. Curious at first. Then hungry. His hand flexed on the arm of the chair, claws threatening to break through again. They will not care about your choice. Elara's breath hitched. So I'm prey to them. You're more than prey, he said fiercely, leaning forward. To them, you'd be a prize. Proof of weakness in me. Something to use. Or destroy. The words sent ice through her veins, colder than the storm outside. But beneath it burned a spark of defiance. Then they'll have to go through you. Lucien's eyes glowed faintly at that, pride and fury tangled together. They will try. A sudden crash outside made her flinch. Lucien was on his feet instantly, body coiled, head snapping toward the door. He inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring, every muscle drawn tight. What is it? Elara whispered. Not storm, he growled. His voice had dropped again, edged with the wolf. Not animal. Another sound followed, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps in snow, heavy, deliberate, circling the cabin. Lucien moved like a shadow, crossing the room to snatch a long blade from above the mantel. Its steel gleamed in the firelight, etched with strange runes. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Elara rose on shaking legs. "Lucien." His gaze cut to hers, eyes glowing fully now, fangs flashing in the firelight. "They've come." And then, from the darkness outside, came a low, answering growl, one voice at first, then many, overlapping, surrounding the cabin. Section 13. The Circle of Predators. The cabin walls trembled with the sound, low growls weaving through the storm like a chorus of predators. Elara's skin prickled, every hair standing on end. Lucien stood before the door, blade in hand, his body taut as a drawn bow. He was no longer simply handsome, no longer simply strange, he was otherworldly, a creature of shadow and firelight, every line of him carved for violence. The growls shifted into laughter. Cruel. Mocking. The kind of laughter that made Elara's stomach twist. One voice, deeper than the rest, called from beyond the door. "Lucien. Still hiding your toys in the mountains." Lucien's grip on the blade tightened, runes glimmering faintly. "You don't belong here, Kale." The name rolled in Elara's mind. Whoever this Kale was, the way Lucien spoke it made her blood run cold. "Oh, but I do," the voice purred. "The storm brought me. And what do I smell?" A pause, deliberate and cruel. "Human." Elara's stomach dropped. She clutched the knife Lucien had given her, though it felt like a child's toy compared to the presence outside. Lucien's voice was sharp as steel. "She's under my protection." The laughter outside deepened, joined by others. "At least 3, maybe more. You can't shield her forever, brother. She's ours by right. Blood calls to blood." "Brother." The word lodged in her chest. Did they mean it literally? Or was it some bond of their kind? The front door rattled, a sharp thud shaking the hinges. Elara gasped, stepping back, but Lucien didn't move. His voice dropped to a growl, not quite human. "Step across this threshold, and it will be your last mistake." Another thud. The wooden beams creaked, snow falling from the roof in a heavy cascade. "Elara," Lucien said without turning, his tone low and urgent. "Go upstairs. Now." Her legs trembled, but she couldn't look away from him, his stance, the blaze in his eyes, the quiet violence ready to ignite. "I'm not leaving you." The thud came again, harder. A crack split along the doorframe. Lucien spun toward her, his face half-shifted, fangs gleaming, eyes molten. "This is not a choice. Go." But before she could move, the window beside the hearth shattered inward. Shards of glass sprayed across the floor, and with them came a blur of shadow, too fast, too large, too feral. Elara screamed. Lucien moved faster. One moment the beast was lunging for her, all claws and fangs and eyes glowing red. The next, Lucien had slammed into it, blade flashing, their bodies crashing against the stone hearth in an explosion of splinters and sparks. The cabin filled with snarls, 2 predators locked in brutal collision. And Elara, frozen, clutching her knife, realized the storm outside had gone quiet. Because every other creature out there was listening. Waiting. Section 14. Blood and Firelight. The intruder slammed Lucien against the stone hearth with enough force to send cracked spiderwebbing across the mortar. Sparks burst from the fire, embers scattering across the rug. Elara scrambled back, clutching her knife, the heat of the flames biting her skin. The creature was taller than Lucien, its form grotesque in its half-shift. Its jaw jutted too far, packed with fangs that gleamed wet in the firelight. Patches of fur rippled across its arms and shoulders, while its eyes glowed a steady, merciless crimson. Lucien's blade whistled through the air, carving deep into its side. The intruder howled, the sound rattling the cabin walls. Blood sprayed dark, thick, smoking where it touched the stone. "Elara, upstairs." Lucien barked again, his voice distorted by the wolf in him. But she couldn't move. Her legs were locked, her mind caught between terror and awe. The fight was brutal, primal, 2 predators locked in a struggle that shook the earth beneath her. The intruder lunged, claws raking Lucien's chest. He snarled, his face twisting, his own fangs flashing. For a moment, the man she knew slipped away, replaced by something wild and terrible. The door finally gave way with a deafening crack. Wood splintered, snow gusted in, and shadows poured through the opening. Shapes moved in the blizzard's glow, at least 3, maybe more. One stepped into the firelight, tall and broad, his movements deliberate. His face was mostly human, but his eyes glowed like embers, and when he smiled, the fangs were unmistakable. Kale. Well, he drawled, his voice rich with cruel amusement. You've gone soft, Lucien. Playing house with prey. Lucien shoved the wounded intruder back, snarling. Step 1 foot closer to her, Kale, and I'll rip your throat out. Kale's grin widened. You forget, we share blood. You can't protect her from what she is to us. His gaze slid to Elara, and the hunger in it made her skin crawl. Delicious. Fragile. Perfect. Something in her snapped then. Maybe it was the way Kale looked at her as if she were nothing but a prize. Maybe it was the way Lucien bled, standing between her and death. But her fear crystallized into something sharp. No, Elara said, her voice trembling but fierce. She stepped from the corner, knife gripped tight, raising it between herself and the monsters. I'm not yours. The room went silent, every predator's gaze snapping to her. Kale's grin faltered. Then he laughed, slow and mocking. She's got spirit, brother. Shame it'll be wasted. Lucien's blade dripped black blood as he planted himself between her and Kale, his voice a guttural snarl. Touch her and you die. The storm outside roared back to life, as if answering him. And in that moment, Elara knew, whether she lived or died tonight, her choice had been made. Section 15. The Price of Protection. Kale lunged. Lucien met him halfway. The sound of their collision was in human flesh and bone slamming with the force of boulders crashing. They tore through the center of the cabin like a hurricane, knocking over furniture, shattering the dining table. Wood splinters flew. Elara ducked behind the hearth as Lucien and Kale clashed. Their movements were too fast to track, flashes of claws and fangs, bursts of shadow. Lucien fought like a man unchained, graceful and brutal, all his restraint burned away. Kale was no less deadly. He moved with a terrifying elegance, his strikes almost playful, but deadly accurate. Where Lucien was controlled chaos, Kale was sadistic precision. Elara. Lucien shouted mid-blow, ducking a slash aimed at his neck. Run now. But it was too late. Another hybrid slipped through the shattered door, smaller, wiry, with pale skin stretched too tightly over his angular bones. His eyes zeroed in on her, and with a hiss, he lunged. Elara barely had time to raise the knife. The creature crashed into her, knocking her off her feet. She slammed into the cabin wall, the blade flying from her hand. Pain shot up her side. The hybrid pinned her, his weight crushing, breath rank with copper and decay. You shouldn't have come here, he hissed, fangs descending. And then something happened. As the creature leaned in, his mouth inches from her throat, Elara's vision blurred. A strange heat surged in her chest, not fear, but something primal. Time slowed. The growl she heard didn't come from Lucien. It came from her. A pulse of energy burst outward from her body, invisible but tangible, like a wave of force. The hybrid was flung back across the room, slamming into a bookcase. Everyone froze. Lucien's head snapped toward her, eyes wide, Kale momentarily stunned in his grip. The hybrid groaned, struggling to rise, but his face was stricken with confusion, and Elara realized fear. What was that? She whispered, staring at her own shaking hands. Kale's smile returned, slower this time. Meaner. Well, he drawled, licking blood from his lip where Lucien had struck him. Did you even know what she was? Lucien's expression shifted instantly from stunned to something darker. What did you say? He growled, fangs bared. Kale's crimson eyes gleamed. She's not just human, brother. The blood sings. Can't you hear it? Lucien froze. Kale shoved him back, stepping away with deliberate calm. You thought you could hide her. Protect her. But she's awakening. He turned his gaze on Elara, and this time it wasn't hunger she saw, it was reverence. And fear. You think she's yours, Lucien? Kale said, stepping toward the door. She may be the end of all of us. With that, he vanished into the storm, taking the others with him. Lucien rushed to Elara's side, falling to his knees, pulling her close. Are you hurt? No, she breathed. Her skin still tingled where the burst of force had come from. But what did he mean? What's happening to me? Lucien stared at her, searching her face like he could find the answer there. I don't know. His voice was barely audible. But something in your blood is changing. And Kale's right about one thing. She met his gaze, heart pounding. What? You're not just human. Section 16, Beneath the Surface. The fire had dimmed to embers. Snow crept in through the shattered window, dusting the floor with pale flakes. The cabin, once a place of safety, now looked like a war zone. Blood stained the hearth, broken furniture littered the floor, and the door hung from one hinge. Elara sat at the edge of the sofa, Lucien kneeling in front of her with a bowl of warm water and strips of linen. You're lucky, he muttered as he gently dabbed at the bruise blooming across her ribs. Nothing's broken. Didn't feel lucky, she winced. Lucien's hands were steady, but his jaw clenched tight. She could feel the fury trembling beneath his skin, not at her, but at himself. At Kale. At what he hadn't seen coming. You should have told me, she said quietly. About them. About what this place really is. I thought I had time, he muttered. I didn't think they'd come this soon. Elara placed a hand over his. What did Kale mean? What's happening to me? Lucien didn't meet her eyes. I don't know. But I felt it too, Elara. That blast of power, it came from you. That wasn't normal. No, he said. It wasn't. Not for a human. The words settled between them like a stone dropped in still water. I've never felt anything like that before, she whispered. I thought I was dying. But it felt like something inside waking up. She nodded. Lucien finally met her gaze, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't fear, but wonder. Your blood, he said. When I first found you, it didn't smell entirely human. I thought maybe I was imagining it. The storm dulls senses. But Kale, he was right. It sings. That's not comforting. He almost smiled, the corner of his mouth twitching. It wasn't meant to be. Elara leaned back against the sofa, eyes on the ceiling. So I'm not human. Or, not entirely. Maybe you were, Lucien said, voice low. Maybe something changed. Or maybe it was always there, dormant. Waiting for something to stir it. And you stirred it. Lucien didn't answer. He didn't have to. His presence, his blood, his touch, had awakened something ancient in her. Something primal. I need to know what I am, she said. I can't go back to pretending I'm just ordinary. Lucien nodded. There's someone who might help. She's old. Wiser than I am. Dangerous, too. But she owes me. Where is she? Deep in the mountains, he said. You won't like the journey. I didn't like crashing in a blizzard either, Elara said. But I survived that. Lucien smiled, and for once, it was full. Real. But behind it lingered a shadow of dread. Then we leave at dawn, he said. Before Kale comes back. Section 17. Into the teeth of the mountains. Dawn came cloaked in fog. Pale gray light filtered through the shattered window, spilling over the wreckage left behind. The fire had burned low, and the cabin sat still, like it was holding its breath. Elara stood at the door, wrapped in a thick coat that Lucien had given her. It was far too large, smelled like pine, ash, and the faint trace of him. She gripped the hilt of a short silver dagger he'd handed her, heavier than the knife before, etched with strange markings. You'll need it, he said. Even if you don't know how to use it yet. She nodded and slipped it into a belt around her hip. What exactly are we walking into? Lucien was fastening straps onto a large black pack, already dressed for the wild, dark layers, boots, cloak, and the sword he never seemed to part with strapped across his back. He looked every bit the predator he was. But his eyes were still the same when they turned to her. Her name is Merid. Elara frowned. That sounds elvish. It's older than that, he said. She's not a wolf. Not a vampire. Not even what I am. She's something else. She sees bloodlines, reads them like threads. She'll know what I am. She'll know more than that, Lucien said quietly. She'll know why Kale wants you. That was the part Elara couldn't shake. Not just what she was, but why now? What had changed? Why was her blood suddenly important enough for a pack of monsters to come crawling out of the woods? As if reading her thoughts, Lucien added, "The mountains are old. They remember things long forgotten. Merit is part of that memory. But she doesn't give anything freely. Then what do we trade?" He met her gaze. Truth. Or pain. Maybe both. The hike began shortly after. Lucien led the way, carving a path through snow with ease. Elara kept close behind, her breath misting in the cold air, legs burning as they climbed. The forest was still, too still. No birds, no rustle of wind, no signs of life. Only the crunch of their boots and the distant echo of some animal scream that didn't belong to anything she recognized. "Elara," Lucien said after an hour of silence, his voice low and thoughtful. "You asked what Kale meant when he said you might be the end of us." She looked up at him. "Yeah. And? There's a prophecy," he said. "Old. Forgotten by most. It speaks of a blood kind, someone born with both human blood and something else. Something ancient. A bridge between what we were and what we could become." "Let me guess," she said. "It's vague. And probably ends with fire and death." Lucien didn't smile. "It ends with a choice." Her throat tightened. "Mine?" He nodded. "Yours." They kept walking. Higher. Colder. The sky above was thick with clouds, but light filtered through like faded gold. "How long until we reach her?" Elara asked. "Before nightfall," Lucien said. Then after a pause. "If we're lucky. And if we're not? We won't be alone in the dark." Section 18. Whispers in the Pines. The trail narrowed as they climbed, flanked on both sides by towering pines so old their bark looked scorched by time. Snow coated the forest floor in an undisturbed blanket, but the further they moved, the more Elara began to feel it. They were being watched. The silence had weight now, a pressure behind her ears, a prickle down her spine. Shadows moved just beyond the line of vision, never fully there, never fully gone. Lucien stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. His ears twitched an almost inhuman gesture, and he tilted his head. "They're close." Elara scanned the forest, heart hammering. "Who?" He turned to her, his eyes sharper now, closer to the beast. "Not wolves. Not Kale's kind. Something older." "Older than you?" "Much." They pressed on. The trees grew thicker, gnarled branches reaching down like claws. Elara found herself whispering without realizing. The air itself felt sacred or cursed. Symbols began appearing on the trees, carved into bark with something sharp and deliberate. Circles. Spirals. Clawed runes that made the back of her skull ache just looking at them. "Elara," Lucien said quietly, his voice stripped of its usual calm. "Don't touch anything." She didn't plan to. An hour passed. Maybe two. The light above dimmed until it felt like dusk, though the sky still showed midday tones. And then the trail opened. They emerged into a wide clearing that seemed untouched by snow. The air here was warm, not in temperature, but in presence. Like the land itself exhaled. At the center stood a massive, ancient stone, taller than a house, split down the middle and pulsing faintly with a violet glow. Roots climbed it like veins. Moss bloomed at its base, even in the dead of winter. Lucien stopped short. "She's awake." Elara stared. "That's her." "No," he pointed to the fissure in the stone. "That's the gate." "She's beyond it." Something shifted behind them. A voice like dry leaves carried on the wind. "You brought me a spark, Lucien." "How unlike you." Elara spun, but there was no one there. Lucien didn't flinch. "She needs answers, Merit. I'm cashing in the debt." The air around them shimmered. From the shadows beside the stone stepped a woman, or what looked like one. Her body was long and graceful, wrapped in a cloak of feathers and bark, her skin pale as frost. But her eyes, they were not mortal eyes. They were mirrors. And they reflected too much. "Merit." She smiled, revealing teeth too sharp, too many. "Oh, I see. The spark is waking and the blood sings loud." She stepped toward Elara, who resisted the urge to step back. "Tell me, child, do you know what you carry?" Elara's voice came out dry. No, that's why I'm here. Merid tilted her head, something ancient and terrible stirring behind her gaze. Then come inside. Bring your wolf. And I will show you. Section 19. The Door Beneath the Skin. Elara followed Merid toward the fissure in the stone. Lucien was close behind, his hand resting near the hilt of his blade, but not drawing it. Even he knew weapons were meaningless here. The violet glow deepened as they approached. The stone pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and then split silently open, revealing a darkness that wasn't absence of light, but something older. Oh wait. A memory too vast to name. Elara, Lucien said behind her, low and warning. Whatever happens in there, don't lie. Don't fight it. Let it come. She nodded, though her skin crawled. Merid didn't walk so much as glide, her feet barely brushing the moss-covered threshold as she passed through the crack in the stone. Elara stepped in after her. The world changed. One moment she was surrounded by trees and snow, the scent of pine and blood still thick in the air. The next, she stood in a vast space with no ceiling, no floor. Only a shifting void of silver fog and suspended shards of black stone, each one reflecting something impossible. Memories. Hers. Others. Flashes of her childhood danced in one, falling off a bike, scraped knees, a woman's voice singing a lullaby that didn't sound quite human. In another shard, she saw Lucien standing over a burning village, eyes gold and teeth bared, dragging a body away from a pack of others with eyes like Kale's. Do not look too long, Merid said, her voice echoing in every direction. Truth has sharp edges. Elara turned from the mirrors, breath catching. What is this place? My memory, Merid said simply. And yours. Lucien stepped beside her, his eyes guarded. Be careful. Always, Elara whispered, though she wasn't sure it was true. Merid stopped in front of a great mirror, taller than any building, rimmed in twisting roots and metal that seemed to grow like vines. Inside it, a reflection waited. But it wasn't Elara. Or rather, it was and wasn't. The woman in the mirror had Elara's face, but her eyes were glowing white, and from her back spread wings of dark flame. Her skin shimmered with sigils, and her shadow writhed like it was alive. Elara staggered back. What is that? Merid's face softened, not with kindness, but with awe. That is the seed. The sleeping fire. The inheritance buried in your bloodline. Lucien's voice was rough. What is she? Merid turned to him. She is bloodbound. The last of a forgotten line. Not vampire. Not wolf. Something older. Something that the others feared so deeply, they erased it from all lore. Elara's stomach turned. Why me? Merid smiled, and the mirrors around them darkened. Because your blood remembers what the world tried to forget. And because you were born under a broken star. The mark of awakening. Lucien's hand found hers instinctively, his claws retracted, but his body rigid with tension. What does it mean? Merid stepped forward until her breath brushed Elara's cheek. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It means she will choose who lives, and who burns. Section 20. The Path of Flame. Elara's fingers twitched in Lucien's grip, but she didn't pull away. She couldn't. The world around her, this memory realm, hummed with ancient tension. Something had awakened within her, and the air tasted different now, richer, sharper, full of meaning she didn't understand. Merid circled her slowly, the folds of her cloak rustling like dry leaves. You were never meant to be hidden, she murmured. But you were. Buried. Bound. Your ancestors sealed it away, fearing what you might become. Sealed what away? Elara asked, her voice hoarse. The fire, Merid said. The birthright. The blood. She gestured to the mirror again, where the glowing-eyed version of Elara watched them impassively, dark wings still folded at her back. Long ago, before vampire and wolf divided the world, there was another race. Born of shadow and starlight. They held dominion over blood not just as a need, but as power. They were the Valari. Lucien stiffened beside her. That's a myth. A bedtime story. Merid smiled without warmth. And so were werewolves once. So were vampires. But myths often begin as warnings. She turned to Elara. The Volari were the origin. Not monstrous, but gods among mortals. When the vampire clans rose, when the wolves rebelled, they feared the Volari's power and drove them to extinction. And now you say I'm one of them? Elara asked, trembling. That I'm Volari. Not fully, Merritt said. But the blood remembers. Somewhere in your ancestry, long hidden, carefully forgotten, one survived. And now, in you, that fire stirs again. Lucien was silent, his hand gripping hers more tightly. And Kale? Elara asked. He called me the end of your kind. Merritt's mirrored eyes darkened. Because if you awaken fully, you'll be able to unmake the bonds that hold both wolf and vampire. You'll see through their lies. You'll choose your own law. And what happens if I don't want any of this? Elara said, voice breaking slightly. Merritt leaned close, her lips brushing Elara's ear. Then you die. And with you dies the last hope of breaking the blood curse that binds this world in shadow. A chill settled over her, heavier than the cold of the forest. You said I'd have to choose. Between what? Merritt raised one long hand, and the world around them shifted. The mirror changed, no longer showing the Volari version of Elara, but two futures. In one, fire. Cities burning. Elara stood at the center, her wings spread wide, and creatures bowed before her, vampires, wolves, mortals alike. She looked terrible and beautiful, a queen of ash. In the other, the world crumbled under ice. Elara's body lay broken, lifeless, her blood spilled into the snow. Lucien knelt beside her, screaming, surrounded by beasts tearing one another apart in chaos. Elara gasped. That's not real. That's not. It is possibility, Merritt whispered. And warning. You will tip the scales. For life, or for ruin. Lucien spoke finally, his voice hollow. How long does she have before it wakes fully? Merritt turned her mirror eyes to him. Soon. Her blood burns hotter with each hour. And the more you stay close, the faster it comes. Lucien flinched, but Elara's grip tightened. I don't care, she said. If I'm going to become something dangerous, I'll need someone to stop me. I'll never hurt you, Lucien said, fierce. Merritt chuckled. Then let us hope she never chooses flame. Section 21, Ash in the Snow. The gateway pulsed once more as Elara stepped through it, emerging back into the cold light of the waking world. The forest around the stone was just as they left it, trees towering, air still, the hush of snowfall descending in lazy spirals. But everything felt different. Lucien came out behind her, eyes scanning the tree-line, his movements sharper now, more animal than man. His sword was back in hand, though he hadn't drawn it yet. Not out of mercy, out of calculation. What you saw in there, he said, his breath misting the air, it doesn't define you. Elara adjusted the straps on her pack, her hands shaking. But it's part of me. He looked at her then, not with pity, not with fear, but something heavier. Yes. And it makes you dangerous. To you. No, he paused. To yourself. Before she could respond, the wind shifted. Lucien's head snapped up. His nostrils flared. Smoke. Elara's stomach dropped. The cabin. They ran. The forest blurred past them, snow kicked up in plumes as Lucien pushed them faster than human pace. Elara stumbled once, but he caught her with an arm around her waist and kept moving. When they crested the final ridge, the smoke was thick and black, curling above the trees like a funeral banner. The cabin was burning. Elara stood frozen, breath torn from her lungs. Flames licked the walls, devouring the roof, consuming the only shelter they had left. The snow around the cabin hissed where it melted under the blaze. Lucien's jaw clenched, muscles twitching. Kale was here. The door had been torn off completely. Blood marked the snow in dragging trails. Not fresh, but not old either. They left a message, he said grimly. What kind of message? Lucien strode to the tree beside the porch, what remained of it, and pointed. Clawed into the bark in jagged strokes were two words. Bring her. Elara's knees nearly gave out. They're not going to wait anymore. No, Lucien said. They know what you are now. They'll try to claim you. Or destroy you before you awaken. But why burn the cabin, she whispered. To cut us off. To remind us there's nowhere safe. Lucien turned slowly, scanning the tree-line, his eyes gleaming gold now. We can't stay in one place. Not anymore. Elara felt the weight of the blade at her side, the ache in her bones, the fire curling beneath her skin. What do we do now? She asked. Lucien's hand reached for hers, clawed, but gentle. Now, we run. And far behind them, somewhere deep in the forest, a howl rose, one she'd never heard before. It wasn't a wolf's call. It was something older. And it was calling her by name. Section 22, The Hollow Path. They didn't stop to rest. Not even when the snow began to fall harder, not when Elara's breath turned ragged and her boots soaked through. Lucien moved ahead like a shadow, tireless, senses stretched out into the forest like invisible wires. Elara kept pace, but just barely. The fire within her, the strange, thrumming energy Merid had awakened, helped numb the cold and quiet the ache. It made her feel like her body belonged to something else now. Something faster, stronger, but also unstable. They crossed an icy river, hiked a narrow pass beneath a frozen cliff face, and followed a trail only Lucien could see. The mountains grew steeper, the trees thinner. Eventually, Lucien stopped. They'd found a small hollow beneath a twisted rock outcrop, protected from the wind. A natural shelter, hidden from above and below. We rest here, he said, already checking the perimeter. For a few hours. No fire. Elara sank down against the rock, breathless. I didn't think you ever got tired. Lucien crouched beside her. I don't. Not like you. He hesitated. But you're not exactly human anymore. She looked up at him. So what am I right now? He was quiet for a long time. Then, becoming. She didn't respond. Couldn't. The word hung in her chest like a bell tolling. Before she could press further, Lucien froze, going perfectly still. His head turned slightly, nostrils flaring. Then he bared his teeth. We're not alone. Elara reached for her dagger, the metal cold in her hand. Kale. No, Lucien growled. Something else. From the darkness, a figure stepped into the hollow, not from the trees, but out of a shadow. Literally. As though the night had peeled open and let him walk through. He was tall, cloaked in midnight, his skin pale with a bluish cast. His eyes glowed faintly, not red like the vampires, not gold like the wolves, but silver. Like moonlight on still water. Lucien moved instantly, placing himself between Elara and the stranger. Step back. Now. The figure didn't flinch. I'm not here to fight, hybrid. If I were, we wouldn't be talking. His voice was smooth, echoing strangely, as if two tones overlapped. Lucien growled. Then why are you here? The figure's gaze shifted past him to Elara. For her. Lucien's blade was in his hand in a blur. She's not yours. I'm not anyone's, Elara snapped, rising to her feet. The stranger tilted his head, not mockingly, but curiously. You're waking, aren't you? He said softly. I can feel it in your blood. You glow to us now. Lucien stepped forward. Us. The man inclined his head. The Hollowborn. Lucien cursed under his breath. Valari remnants. Elara stiffened. You're like me. Not exactly, the Hollowborn said. You are purer than us. We're fractured. Scattered. Bound to the shadows of the old blood. But you're the spark. The first flame reborn. Elara swallowed hard. And what do you want? To warn you, he said. Kale is not the only one hunting you now. There are others, things that slept when your kind vanished. And now they stir. If you don't control the fire, it will control you. Lucien stepped forward, blade still ready. Why help us? The Hollowborn looked straight at Elara. Because if she dies, all of us vanish. Forever. And with that, the shadows behind him coiled like ink, and he stepped backward into the dark, vanishing without a sound. Section 23, Embers Beneath the Temple. The Hollowborn's warning lingered long after he vanished into the shadows. Elara sat against the cold stone wall of the hollow, knees drawn to her chest, watching the horizon where his silhouette had been moments ago. Lucien hadn't sheathed his blade. He stood, still as a statue, listening for a second arrival that never came. "They'll keep coming," Elara said after a long silence. "Yes," Lucien replied, finally lowering the sword. "And now they won't just try to claim you." He turned toward her, expression grim. "They'll try to use you." The Hollowborn? They were once Valari. Or close to it. Their kind fractured when the bloodlines were hunted down. Some bound themselves to shadow, lost their flesh. Others sold their power for survival. His jaw clenched. "They're desperate. And desperate things always lie." "He didn't lie about the fire," Elara whispered. "I feel it growing. Every hour. Like it wants out." Lucien finally sheathed the sword and crouched in front of her. "We're running out of time." Merritt gave us answers, but not enough. "There's only one place left that might help." "Where?" "The ruined temple." Elara frowned. "That sounds like a place designed to kill people." He almost smiled. "It might. But it's the last place where the Valari worshipped their own before they were wiped out." "Where is it?" "South of the Hollow Peaks," he said. "Hidden in the Forgotten Vale. The journey will be hard. Dangerous. It was lost on purpose. And we're going to find it?" Lucien's gaze burned with resolve. "We have to. Because if what the Hollowborn said is true, there may be something inside that temple to help you control the awakening. Or stop it from consuming you." Elara rose slowly, shaking out her limbs. "Then we'd better move before Kale finds us again." They began the trek by nightfall, avoiding the roads entirely. Lucien kept them on deer trails, winding through dense forest and over steep ridgelines. The higher they climbed, the more the landscape changed. The trees thinned into blackened husks, charred long ago by some ancient fire. The wind no longer howled, it whispered. And every whisper seemed to know Elara's name. They passed old stones marked with Valari glyphs, buried beneath moss and ice. Some pulsed faintly as she passed, glowing for a moment before fading again. Lucien noticed. "They recognize you." Elara didn't answer. She was too focused on the heat rising beneath her skin. Her body felt wrong. Not in pain. Not ill. Just unfamiliar. As if her own blood had become something else entirely. By dawn, they reached the edge of a valley that dropped suddenly, revealing a massive gorge wrapped in mist and snow. At its center, barely visible through the fog, were jagged spires of obsidian jutting from the earth like the ribs of a buried beast. The temple. Lucien stared at it for a long moment. "It's awake." Elara looked at him. "The building. The blood inside it." She stepped forward, pulse thundering in her ears. Because the temple was singing to her. Not with words. With memory. Section 24. The Trial of Blood. The temple loomed like a buried god, its black spires jutting from the snowy valley like jagged bones. Elara and Lucien descended the slope carefully, the ground treacherous with ice. With every step, the air grew warmer, the snow thinner, as if the temple itself rejected the cold. When they reached the threshold, Elara paused. Her skin tingled, the mark on her shoulder, the faint crescent shape she'd had since birth, pulsed with heat. Lucien noticed. "It's reacting to the blood wards." "The what?" He gestured to the entry arch, where strange symbols shimmered faintly on the stone. "Valari glyphs. Only someone of the bloodline can cross without being torn apart." She raised an eyebrow. "That would have been good to know before we got here." Lucien gave her a grim smile. It was a gamble. She glared, then stepped forward. The glyphs flared to life, a web of golden light tracing across the stone. For a breathless second, the world held still. The heat grew unbearable. Then the light vanished. The door creaked open. Inside, the temple was silent and vast. Shadowy corridors stretched out in all directions. Broken statues lined the walls, some crumbled to rubble, others eerily intact. Their features were noble, alien, and deeply familiar. Elara reached out to one. Its eyes glowed faintly beneath the dust. Lucien walked beside her, sword drawn but low. Valari temples weren't places of worship. They were trials. What kind of trials? He hesitated. The kind designed to test blood, strength, will, and truth. They moved deeper into the structure, guided by an unseen pull. Elara felt it like a thread in her chest, tugging gently, insistently, until they entered a vast circular chamber. The walls were covered in mirrors. Not like Marid's mirrors, these weren't memory-bound or enchanted. They were raw obsidian, so polished they reflected not just the surface, but something behind it. In the center of the room stood a stone dais. Atop it, a bowl. Inside, blood. Thick, dark, and still warm. Lucien drew in a breath. This is the trial of flame. How do you know? He stepped forward, jaw tight. Because this room exists in every myth my kind was ever told to fear. Elara approached the bowl, heart pounding. What do I do? Lucien didn't answer. He was staring at the mirrors, his reflection rippling unnaturally in each one. The temple answered for her. A voice echoed through the chamber, not spoken aloud, but within her mind. Blood awakens blood. Flame recalls flame. Will you burn or bind? The bowl shimmered. Without knowing why, Elara reached out and dipped her fingers into the blood. It was hot, hotter than it should be, but it didn't burn. When she touched her forehead, the glyphs on the walls ignited, and the mirrors began to shift. Each one now showed a different version of her. In one, she wore black armor and ruled from a throne of bone, Lucien standing at her side, his eyes hollow. In another, she was a fugitive, hunted and dying, her body torn by her own flames. In a third, she walked alone through a burning city, her eyes pure white, her face serene. And in the last, she was mortal, unchanged, untouched, living a quiet life in a cabin, but utterly alone. Lucien stepped beside her. These are futures. No, she whispered. These are choices. The voice returned. Step into the fire, Elara Valari. Prove you are not ash. The floor beneath the dais cracked. A circle of flame burst to life. Lucien grabbed her arm. You don't have to do this. Elara looked into his eyes and knew she did. Not for the world. Not even for herself. But because she had to know what she truly was. She stepped into the flame. Section 25. The fire remembers. The fire did not burn. It consumed, yes, but not in pain. Elara expected agony, a scorching of flesh and bone. Instead, she felt weightless. As if her body had fallen away, and only the core of her being remained, raw, exposed, trembling. The flames surged around her like liquid gold. Symbols appeared in the air, glowing threads of memory, weaving into shapes she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. The fire was not a weapon. It was memory. She drifted in a void of light and heat, visions blooming around her like flowers of smoke. A woman fierce and beautiful stood atop a battlefield, her hair black as obsidian, eyes white-hot with fire. Soldiers bowed before her. Valari soldiers. Her name echoed, Saria. Another vision, the same woman, holding a child, dark curls, golden eyes, a crescent birthmark on her shoulder. The child giggled. Saria wept. Then betrayal. The Valari stronghold overrun. Wolves and vampires together, bound by a single purpose, destroy the flame bloodline. Saria fought like a god. Her wings of fire spreading across the sky, but even gods could fall. Before the end, she whispered to the child, hidden in a basket of reeds at the river's edge. Live. Forget. And one day, burn again. The vision shattered. Elara gasped as she fell through memory after memory. Generations of hiding, fleeing, bloodlines thinned, altered, married into mortals. Until finally, a small village. A mother who never spoke of the past. A girl who never understood why fire loved her. Me. A new vision formed. Lucien. Standing over her sleeping form in the cabin after she collapsed from the storm. He touched her cheek. Whispered something. Something he hadn't told her. If I lose myself protecting you, it will still be worth it. And then pain. A sharp, burning pain in her chest. Not from the fire. From within. A final vision bloomed, Elara, older, her eyes no longer mortal. Standing in the middle of a ruined forest, facing down Kale. Behind her, Lucien wounded. Blood everywhere. Kale saying, "You don't even know what you are." Her answer, "No. I know exactly what I am. The fire roared and consumed the vision. Elara screamed. Light exploded. And then, silence. She opened her eyes. Lucien stood at the edge of the circle, watching her with something like awe and fear. Her skin glowed faintly. The mark on her shoulder now pulsed like a living flame. Her eyes shimmered with a flicker of gold and white, like they hadn't fully settled on one world. Lucien took a cautious step forward. Elara. She turned to him slowly. I saw them. All of them. My ancestors. My beginning. He looked at her carefully. Anne. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I'm Valari. She raised her hand. Fire danced along her palm. But it didn't burn. It obeyed. I remember now. Section 26. The Bait of Blood. The fire had left its mark on more than just Elara's body. The temple was quiet now, the glyphs dimmed, the air still. But as she and Lucien stepped out into the snow-blasted valley, the world itself felt different. Lighter in some ways. Heavier in others. Lucien kept glancing at her, like he was trying to convince himself she was still her. You're quiet, she said, breaking the silence as they began their descent from the mountain. I watched you walk through a wall of flame, he said. Then come out glowing. Forgive me if I need a moment. She smirked, but it faded quickly. I'm still me. Just more. His gaze sharpened. You control it now? Not completely. Elara held out her palm. A flicker of fire danced there, bright and eager. She closed her hand and it vanished. But it listens. Lucien exhaled, shoulders relaxing, just a little. They hiked down through twisted rock and frozen scree until the temple was far behind. They would need to keep moving. Elara felt the world noticing her now. Like her awakening had sent out a flare across the supernatural sky. It wasn't long before Lucien stopped abruptly. He held out a hand. Elara. Someone's nearby. She strained to listen, then she heard it. A heartbeat. Human. Rapid. Afraid. They turned a bend in the trail and found a man, bound to a tree. His coat was torn, face bruised and bloodied, but he was unmistakably real. Human. Elara's stomach dropped. No. The man looked up, one eye swelling shut. Elara, he croaked. Ben, she whispered. Her childhood friend. Her almost something. The one person from her past she still missed. Lucien growled low in his throat. This is a trap. Elara rushed to his side anyway, kneeling and cutting the ropes with a flick of flame that startled even her. What happened? She asked. Who did this? Ben winced. He said you'd come. Said he'd give me back if you proved you remembered who you were. Lucien's head snapped up, eyes scanning the tree line. Where is he? A slow clap echoed from above. Kale stood on a rock ledge, arms crossed, flanked by two more hybrids, both masked, both carrying blades. Well done, Kale said, smiling down at them. You passed your trial. And now, here we are. Lucien stepped in front of Elara and Ben. You didn't have to drag mortals into this. Kale's smile twisted. Mortals are useful. Fleeting. But sometimes, his eyes locked on Elara. They bring out the fire in you. Elara stood, the wind whipping her coat back, fire sparking to life in her eyes. You wanted me awake, she said. Now I am. Kale's grin widened. Then prove it, Valari. Step away from the wolf. Come with me. Or the next human I take won't be breathing. Lucien's claws slid free, a snarl low in his chest. Elara stepped forward. Lucien's hand shot out. What are you doing? She didn't look away from Kale. Ending this. Then, with a flick of her wrist, fire surged from her palm, not toward Kale, but into the sky, a signal flare of power. Kale's face changed. Just for a moment. Fear. And that's when Elara said, You want a queen of fire? She stepped fully into the clearing, fire circling her feet. Then burn with me. Section 27. The Queen's Fire. The sky answered Elara's flare with silence. But the land around her shifted, twigs snapped, wind twisted, and snow melted in a wide radius around her. She wasn't summoning the fire. She was the fire. Kale stepped back once, a subtle movement, but Lucien saw it. fear, respect, recognition. You think you control it, Kale said, drawing his blade slowly. But you're just a spark, Elara. You haven't burned yet. Then strike first, she said coldly. And find out who burns. Behind her, Lucien pulled Ben to safety, dragging him toward a thicket of rocks. The hybrids beside Kale dropped from the ledge, landing with animal grace in the snow. They circled, cautious but ready. Lucien snarled, blade in hand. 2 for me, 1 for you? Cute, Elara said. But I've got them all. Kale moved first, blinding speed, blade flashing for her neck. Elara didn't flinch. Fire erupted from her skin like armor, his blade clashing against it with a shriek of metal. She spun with inhuman grace, catching Kale's arm in a burst of flame. His coat ignited. He staggered back, swearing. The others leapt in. Lucien intercepted one midair, driving his sword clean through its chest. The other landed behind Elara, fangs bared. Too slow. She turned, grabbing him by the throat, and fire poured from her hand. His scream was cut off as his body turned to ash in a single breath. Kale lunged again, and this time she let him get close. He drove his blade through her shoulder, just a little. She grabbed the hilt, her blood hissing on the metal. And smiled. Too late, she whispered. The fire exploded outward. A ring of flame burst from her body, searing the snow, knocking Kale off his feet. He crashed into the rocks, smoke rising from his jacket. One side of his face blistered, burned. He stared at her, stunned. Elara walked forward, eyes glowing with white fire. You don't own me, she said. Not my blood. Not my fate. Kale coughed, forcing himself to stand. You can't run from what you are. I'm not running anymore. She raised her hand. But before she could strike again, Lucien was suddenly there, grabbing her wrist. Elara. Stop. She blinked. Her vision swam. The fire surged higher. He's mine, she snarled. He took Ben. He's hunted me. Yes. But if you kill him like this, the flame wins. Not you. Her breath caught. Her heart thundered. The fire roared in her chest, demanding blood. But Lucien's hand was warm. Real. Grounding. Slowly, the fire receded. Elara lowered her arm. The flames on her skin guttered out. Kale sagged against the rock, badly burned, one arm useless. Lucien stepped between them, voice cold. You come for her again, I will not stop her next time. Kale looked at Elara through swollen eyes. You're not done yet. You think this power makes you safe? You've only called to worse things now. Then he vanished. His hybrid speed carrying him away into the forest, trailing smoke and blood. Silence fell. Elara dropped to her knees. The fire gone. Her limbs shaking. Lucien knelt beside her. You're okay. It's over. She looked up at him, eyes hollow. No. It's just beginning. And far, far away, something ancient stirred in the dark. Something that heard her fire. And answered it. Section 28. Eyes in the dark. 3 days passed. They left the mountain behind, traveling under cover of night, taking the longest paths, the hidden ones, the ones not even the wolves used anymore. The ruined temple had given Elara answers, but it had also opened a door she couldn't close. And now, things were watching. At first, it was just the sense of being followed, that uncomfortable prickling along her spine, the occasional blur at the edge of her vision. Lucien noticed it too. He said nothing, but his posture had changed. Always alert. Always armed. Ben traveled with them now. He wasn't the same as before. He didn't talk much. Not since Kale. Not since Elara had burned a man alive. She couldn't blame him. He still looked at her with the same concern in his eyes, but now it was laced with fear. On the 4th night, the stars vanished. Not behind clouds. Not to weather. They were simply gone. Elara stared up at the blank sky, heart pounding. Lucien, do you see that? Lucien looked up. His jaw clenched. They're here. She turned to him. Who? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Ben. You need to go. Now. Take the ridge trail, head south. Don't stop. Ben shook his head. No, I'm not leaving her. Lucien grabbed him by the coat, snarling. This isn't about you. If you stay, you die. Ben looked at Elara. She hesitated, then nodded. Go. Please. He looked like he wanted to argue. But he turned and ran. Lucien drew his blade. Don't run, he told her. No matter what. If you run, they chase. Lucien. Who's coming? The woods fell silent. Then the shadows moved. Figures stepped from the trees tall, thin, their limbs too long, heads tilted unnaturally. They didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Their eyes glowed pale blue, and their skin looked stretched too tightly over bones of ash and smoke. Lucien's breath came sharp. The Hollowborn lied. They weren't the last. The creatures watched them with eerie stillness. Then one stepped forward. Its voice came not from its mouth, but from everywhere, from the air itself. She wakes. The flame returns. The seal must not be broken. Elara lifted her hand, fire sparking at her fingertips. I don't know what that means. But if you're here to stop me, you are the catalyst. Lucien moved closer to her, sword raised. Catalyst of what? The creature's eyes pulsed brighter. Of the end. Or the beginning. And then they charged. Lucien met the first with a roar, blade flashing silver in the moonless dark. Elara flung a wall of flame between her and the advancing horrors, but they didn't burn like Kale's kind. They moved through the fire, screaming soundlessly. She blasted the ground, sending waves of molten earth upward. One creature was torn apart, but another took its place. Lucien was fighting like a demon, blood sprang from shallow cuts, teeth bared. Elara, he shouted. They're not just after you. They want to bind you, stop the transformation. She turned. One of the creatures was inches from her, hand outstretched, reaching not for her throat, but for her chest. She felt the fire inside her shudder. Then, a howl. Not Lucien. Not Kale. Something older. The monsters froze. Turned. And something ripped from the sky, a blur of wings and black smoke. The creatures screamed, retreating into the trees. Lucien pulled Elara behind him, panting. What in the hell? A figure dropped from the sky. Tall. Armored in dark bone. Eyes glowing violet. Wings of void light flared behind him, half-torn but radiant. The figure knelt before Elara. And spoke with a voice that vibrated in her bones. Daughter of Flame. I have come for you. Section 29, The Last Sentinel. The winged figure knelt before Elara as if in worship, head bowed, one hand pressed to his chest. The wings charred, tattered, still glowed faintly with power, as if the very shadows bent away from them. Lucien stood frozen, sword at the ready, caught between defense and disbelief. What is he? The figure rose, impossibly tall and graceful, his armor etched with Valari glyphs that pulsed as they looked at him. His face was striking, angular, otherworldly, both beautiful and terrible. And his eyes, violet suns behind bone-white lashes. I am Thane, he said, voice deep and resonant, echoing as if spoken from a cathedral carved in the stars. Last of the Flay Wardens. Guardian of the Seal. Elara blinked. The seal. The creatures said I would break it. Thane inclined his head. Because you will. You must. Lucien stepped forward. If she breaks it, the world could burn. We've seen the visions. Thane's eyes flicked to him, calm but piercing. The world is already burning, wolf spawn. You simply don't feel the heat yet. Try me, Lucien growled. Elara stepped between them. Wait. No more riddles. What is the seal? Why do they want it unbroken? Thane looked at her long and hard, as though seeing not just her, but every version of her that had ever lived. The seal was placed over 1,000 years ago, he said. After the Valari were betrayed, slaughtered by the wolves and the blood clans. It binds the old flame. The true fire. It is the source of our power and our curse. I don't understand. You carry a shard of that fire in your blood, Thane said. A fragment passed down through exile and silence. The temple called to you because you are the first in generations whose blood sings loud enough to awaken it. Lucien folded his arms. And if she breaks the seal? Thane looked back to Elara. Then the old gods return. The fire will choose a queen. Or a destroyer. Elara stared. Why me? I didn't ask for this. No, Thane said softly. But you were born for it. And now there is no unchoosing. She rubbed her forehead, heart pounding. Then what were those things in the forest? Thane's wings flexed. The Hollowborn were not the only remnants of the old world. Some were created to guard the seal, twisted guardians bound in shadow. But over the centuries, their purpose corrupted. Now they serve only fear. And the fear of your fire has woken them. Lucien paced like a caged wolf. We need a way to stop them. If she's the only one who can break the seal, that makes her a target to everyone. Thane's gaze didn't move. That is why I am here. I swore an oath, long before your kind were clawing in caves, to protect the Flameborn. And now, you are all that remains. Elara let the weight of it settle on her chest. Guardian. Seal. War. She looked at Thane. You're saying I'm the last Valari? Thane nodded. You are the Flame's final heir. And you must choose what burns next. Before she could answer, the wind shifted. Lucien's head turned sharply. Something's coming. Thane's wings unfurled again. Then we move. There's a shrine not far from here, a place untouched by shadow. It will hide you. For now. Elara looked toward the trees. She felt them watching again, the Hollowborn. Kale. Maybe worse. She turned to Thane. Take us there. And together, they vanished into the deep wood where the roots of ancient gods still whispered in sleep. Section 30. The Shrine of Ash and Silence. The shrine lay hidden in a glade where time seemed to fold in on itself. Trees grew in perfect spirals around a clearing choked with moss and stone, their roots coiling like serpents through ancient ruins. A small, crumbling tower marked the center. Half buried in earth and covered in black vines that seemed to pulse faintly as the trio approached. This is it? Elara asked, breathless. It looks dead. Thane stepped forward. It sleeps. Like the rest of our kind. Lucien kept a few paces back, his arms crossed as he scanned the woods. A lot of sleeping, not a lot of surviving, from what I've seen. Elara shot him a look. You all right? He gave her a tight nod, but didn't meet her gaze. Fine. She didn't press, not yet. The air within the shrine was thick with ancient magic. The tower's interior glowed faintly from runes carved into its circular walls, the same glowing symbols she'd seen in the temple. But here, they were unbroken. Whole. Thane gestured for Elara to enter alone. This place was built for the Valari to train in secret during the First Wars. It will respond to your blood. No one else may enter. Lucien bristled. She just fought off an entire nest of shadow things. She needs rest, not more. She needs control, Thane cut in, calm but firm. You saw what happened. Her fire is awakening too quickly. If she doesn't shape it, it will shape her. Elara stepped between them. It's all right. I'll go. She met Lucien's eyes, saw the worry swimming just beneath the anger. He nodded reluctantly. I'll be outside. Thane opened the shrine door. You will not be harmed here. But you may face yourself. The stone parted like water. Elara stepped through. Inside, everything changed. The ruin faded. The walls turned to obsidian veined with firelight. She stood in a reflection of herself, the shrine as it once was, before the fall. Statues of Valari ancestors lined the walls, their eyes glowing as they watched her. A voice echoed from above. Not Thane's. Not Merid's. Her own. Will you wield it, or wear it? The fire within her stirred. Memories surged her village, her mother's final words, Kale's threat, Lucien's hand in hers, Merid's mirror, and the flames that answered her call. The power came again, not like an explosion this time, but like an ocean. Vast. Still. Waiting. And she reached for it. She didn't fight it. Didn't run. She invited it in. The fire swept through her, not burning, but reshaping. The mark on her shoulder flared, her eyes blazed white gold, and her heartbeat echoed with magic. When she opened her eyes, she saw everything, the glyphs on the walls, the lines of magic running through the land outside, the distant flare of Kale's presence like a bleeding wound on the horizon. She also saw Lucien, sitting outside the shrine, alone, and afraid. When she stepped back out, the glow in her skin had faded, but something new lingered in her posture. Poise. Command. She was still Elara, but now the flame bent around her, not the other way around. Lucien stood quickly, eyes scanning her. "You're okay?" She nodded. "I'm more than okay." He didn't smile. "Not this time." "Then tell me," he said softly, "how much longer until you don't need me anymore?" Her heart cracked, not from power, but from pain. She stepped close to him, placing her hand gently on his chest. "You think that's what this is? That this power makes you less important?" His jaw worked, but he said nothing. "I chose you," she whispered. "Before the fire. Before the temple. Before all of it." Lucien looked into her glowing eyes, and for a moment, the fear faded. Not all of it, but enough. Thane watched silently from the edge of the trees, his wings folded behind him. The past had been remembered, but the war hadn't even begun. And across the land, the seal shuddered. It would not hold much longer. Section 31. Blood Ties and Betrayal. Far from the shrine, across black rivers and frost-laced plains, deep beneath a forgotten city, Kale knelt in silence. The chamber around him was built of black marble and iron, its ceiling high and vaulted like a cathedral of bones. Torches burned cold blue flame, and the air was thick with the perfume of ancient dust and blood. He was not alone. The figure before him reclined on a throne carved from obsidian and bone, her legs draped over one armrest like a lounging predator. She looked almost human until she moved. Her limbs were too fluid, her eyes too still. She wore a crown of silver thorns. Her lips were black as ink. And her voice, when she spoke, was velvet soaked in venom. "You failed to bring her," she said without looking at him. Kale kept his eyes lowered. "She's more powerful than expected. The flame awakened in her faster than I'd planned. And now you've earned her wrath." "I earned her fear, my queen." Kale dared to look up. "She still doesn't understand the seal. Or the throne beneath it. She still believes she can choose peace." The queen smiled, revealing elegant, razor-sharp fangs. "You think fear gives you an advantage? I think fear will make her hesitate. And when she hesitates, I will strike." The queen rose with unearthly grace. Her long dress rippled like smoke, woven from shadow and silk. "Do you remember what you promised me when I took you in, Kale?" He bowed his head again. "To bring you the last of the Valari. Alive or dying." She stepped down from the throne and circled him slowly. "I have waited 1,000 years for this flame to rise again. My sisters lie beneath stone and ash, dreaming of blood and fire. I want her alive. I want her burning." Kale clenched his fists. "She's surrounded. The wolf hybrid. And now a Flay warden." That made the queen stop. Her smile vanished. "Thane lives. He came to her at the shrine. He's guarding her." The queen's eyes turned cold. "Then he has broken the oath of silence. If Thane protects her, the seal is nearly ready to break." "Let me move against him," Kale said quickly. "Let me kill him." The queen tilted her head. "Not yet. There are older weapons than blades and claws." She turned toward the far wall, where a great map of the Forgotten Realms was etched into stone. Her nail traced a line toward a black crater surrounded by ruins. "The old capital," she whispered. "The seat of Valari fire. If she reaches it, she will awaken not just the blood, but the throne." Kale stepped forward. "Then I'll destroy it before she gets there." "No," the queen said. "You will draw her to it." He blinked. "Why?" Her smile returned, not cruel, but inevitable. "Because that city is where it all began. Where her ancestor was crowned. Where the flame was first sealed. If you want her to choose power over peace." She turned, eyes gleaming. "Then force her to walk through the ghosts of her empire." Kale bowed. "And if she survives it?" The queen's voice was a whisper of ash. "Then we offer her the crown. And take her when she reaches for it." Back at the shrine, Elara stirred from troubled dreams. She had seen a city, covered in black glass, burning beneath a violet sky. A throne of flame, and her own hands resting on it. Lucien touched her shoulder. "Another vision?" She nodded. "A place I've never been. But it felt like I belonged there." Thane entered the room, wings folding behind him. You saw the capital. Elara looked up sharply. You know it? Thane's jaw tightened. It is where the Valari fell, and where the throne still waits. If you go there, your choice will be made. Elara stood, heart pounding. Then we're going. All of us. Lucien frowned. You sure? No, she said, fire already sparking in her palm. But if this ends where it began, I want to be the one to finish it. Section 32. The City Beneath the Black Glass. They journeyed for 3 days through a dying forest. Trees warped by old magic loomed like twisted sentinels, their bark charred and hollow, their branches clawing at the sky. Even the air tasted wrong, like old fire and forgotten names. Thane moved ahead of them, silent, wings tucked tight to his back. Lucien flanked Elara like a shield, every sound setting his muscles on edge. You've been here before, Elara said on the second night, watching Thane as he stood guard, eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't turn. Once. Long ago. When the city still breathed. What happened? It gave everything to stop the end. Elara waited for more, but he offered no explanation. By the time they reached the ridge that overlooked the fallen capital, the sky had turned strange, not cloudy, not dark. Just dim, like the light itself feared to touch the ruins. Before them, spread across the valley like a corpse draped in shadow, lay the lost city of Verithka, once the heart of the Valari Empire. Obsidian spires jutted from cracked earth. Streets were paved with veins of black glass, still molten in places, flickering faintly with cursed flame. At the city's center, a temple fortress, shaped like a crown lying on its side. The Throne Keep. Lucien stared in awe. It looks like it exploded and froze mid-collapse. Because it did, Thane said. The last queen shattered the city to seal the fire. The seal is beneath the keep. Elara's breath caught. The air down there hummed. The fire inside her pulled toward it like a compass made of blood and memory. Kale wants me to come here, she said. He's waiting. Yes, Thane said. And he's not alone. They made their way down carefully, skirting the main roads and moving through broken alleys where the walls still whispered in the Valari tongue. Elara could feel the city watching her. Not in malice. Not in welcome. In recognition. They entered the outer plaza by midday. And the city responded. Glyphs on the stone lit up as she passed. Fires guttered to life in empty braziers. Statues wept molten tears. Lucien swore under his breath. This place is alive. No, Thane corrected. It's remembering. When they crossed the bridge leading to the keep, the air grew thick. The shadows grew longer. And the first trap sprang. A line of black glass shattered beneath Lucien's foot, and from the chasm beneath, a creature surged. Once human, now warped. Its flesh twisted, its eyes hollow, its body fused with jagged obsidian. It screamed, a sound that made Elara's bones ache. Lucien met it head-on, sword flashing. Sparks flew. The creature howled and writhed, slashing with claws of fused metal and bone. Elara stepped forward. Fire rose behind her like a tidal wave. Thane's voice cut through the roar. Don't burn the bridge. It's laced with soul glass. Too much fire will collapse it. Elara gritted her teeth and funneled her power inward, shaping the flame, containing it. She reached out, fire threading between her fingers like silk, and pulled the creature into it. It didn't burn. It melted, dissolving into shimmering black ash. Lucien staggered back. More coming. And they were. Dozens. The guardians of the seal. Elara stood at the head of the bridge, fire blooming in her eyes. They want to stop me from reaching the keep. Thane raised his blade, shaped like a fawn carved from a fallen star. Then we make them fail. Lucien placed a hand on her back. Let's finish what they started. Together, the three of them charged into the heart of Verithka, through flame, memory, and death toward the throne keep, where the seal pulsed like a sleeping god's heartbeat. And deep below it, Kale opened his veins and whispered to the queen. It's time. Section 33. The Throne and the Ghost. The gates of the throne keep stood shattered. Not broken by force, but by something older. Older than time, older than rage. The kind of breaking that came from grief. The trio entered through the gaping maw, their steps echoing in the ruined hall beyond. Dust spiraled in sunless shafts of violet light. Massive pillars held up the crumbling ceiling, each carved with Valari runes, and every one of them lit as Elara passed beneath. She felt the heat grow with every step. Not dangerous, but familiar. Like coming home to a hearth that had waited centuries for her return. Lucien kept his hand on the hilt of his blade. He hadn't spoken since the last guardian fell. His focus now was purely on protection. On her. Thane walked ahead, wings tucked, armor pulsing faintly with his heartbeat. "This is where she made her last stand," he said quietly. "Queen Saria, your ancestor." She burned 1,000 invaders to ash and sealed the flame beneath her own body. Elara looked up at the murals etched into the high stone walls. There, carved in shadows and flame, was the whole story. A woman on a throne. A city falling. A child whisked away in a river of gold. A fire consuming a world. And then nothing. Just silence. Stone. Elara stepped into the center of the hall. Her feet stopped on a perfect circle carved into the floor, the mark of succession. The place where Valari queens once stood to be chosen by the flame. The fire inside her pulsed so violently it hurt. "Something's down there," she whispered, eyes closing. "Beneath the throne." Thane nodded. "The seal." Lucien frowned. "I still don't understand what it does." "It holds the source," Thane said grimly. "The first flame. The original fire that gave the Valari their power. If Elara touches it, she becomes the heir not just to her bloodline, but to the throne itself. She will no longer be becoming. She will be." Lucien stiffened. "And what happens to her if she's not ready?" Thane said nothing. Elara stepped forward. "I'm ready." Lucien reached out. "Elara." "I have to be," she said, turning to him, eyes bright and fierce. "They're coming, Lucien. Kale, the queen, the Hollowborn, everyone. I'm done running. If I fall, I fall. But if I don't try." She didn't finish. Instead, she reached out and touched the center of the floor. The stone sank. With a sound like the sigh of the world itself, the floor cracked and slid open, revealing a staircase descending into pure darkness. A light flared to life. The mark on Elara's shoulder burned gold. She descended. Alone. Neither Lucien nor Thane could follow. Not into this. The stairs went on forever. The air grew hotter, heavier. Then the steps ended, and she stepped into a massive chamber carved from obsidian and flame glass. At its center floated a shard of fire, no larger than a heart. And on the floor beside it, burned into the stone, was a ghost. Queen Saria. Or what was left of her. A figure of light and shadow, her features carved from memory, her voice echoing across time. "Daughter." Elara fell to her knees. Her voice trembled. I'm not ready." Saria's ghost stepped forward. "None of us were. But we choose anyway." The fire shard pulsed brighter. Saria gestured to it. "Touch it. See what we saw. Burn. Then rise." Elara reached forward. And the flame took her. Section 34. The Flame That Remembers. The moment Elara touched the shard, time ceased. There was no pain. No fire. No body. Only light. She fell upward, or maybe inward, through a tunnel of blinding color and sound. Echoes of voices long dead screamed and sang in equal measure. The Valari language flowed through her, not as words, but as truth. And then, stillness. She stood in a world before the world. The sky was a sea of gold and violet flame. The land was dark glass, cracked with rivers of lava, breathing like a living thing. Towers rose like blades from the earth, pulsing with power that felt too vast to belong to any people. And at the center of it all, on a high obsidian dais, a woman stood. Not Saria, but the first. The one who forged the flame. Her name thundered through Elara's bones like a heartbeat. Aelith. The first flamebearer. The one who spoke to the gods and chose fire over silence. Elara watched not with eyes, but with soul, as Aelith raised her hands and called the fire from the sky. Not conjured. Called. And the heavens answered. A storm of starfire fell, burning the sky, wrapping around her like a lover, fusing with her bones. The Valari were born not from blood, but from a covenant. A pact between mortal and divine. But the fire was not meant for mortals. Not truly. It demanded cost. Power for sacrifice. Flame for memory. Immortality for loss. And so the Valari grew in strength. They lit the world. They ruled. They burned back the darkness. But in time, the fire began to hunger. It grew. Twisted. Consumed. And then the war began. Elara saw it, all of it. The betrayal of the wolves. The vampire clans aligning with the broken gods. The Valari falling, city by city. And Aeletha's last vision, her descendants, fleeing, hiding, vanishing into legend. But before she died, she gathered the surviving flames, shards of her power, and sealed them beneath the capital. To protect the world. From them. From herself. From what the flame could become if unworthy hands claimed it again. The last image burned into Elara's mind. A future. A throne of fire. A queen crowned in gold and sorrow. Her hand outstretched. Not to burn. To save. Then the vision shattered. Elara gasped and fell to her knees in the obsidian chamber. The shard floated before her, now calm. Saria's ghost stood nearby, quiet, waiting. Elara's voice was a whisper. It wasn't power. It was protection. Saria nodded. And now, it must be wielded again. Elara stood, eyes burning white gold. Her voice echoed in the chamber, no longer hers alone. I am Elara Valari, daughter of fire. I claim the flame not for war, but to end it. The shard flared, then rushed into her chest. The seal broke. Above ground, the sky cracked. Lucien fell to one knee as a pulse of raw heat exploded through the keep. Thane raised his blade skyward. She has awakened. And across the land, every supernatural being felt it. In the queen's court, Kale dropped his goblet. The wine turned to vapor in his hand. The queen looked to the north and whispered, so the fire chooses again. But not all were pleased. In deep places, things not seen since the first flame began to stir. They had waited. And now the fire had opened the door. Section 35, Ash, Crown and Return. When Elara rose from the sealed chamber, the keep felt different. The ruins no longer groaned with time and sorrow, they breathed. The very stone hummed beneath her feet. Each step sent echoes of flame through the floor, like the city itself was waking with her. She emerged into the throne room in a halo of golden fire, eyes glowing like twin stars. Lucien turned first. His breath caught. Elara. She didn't speak right away. Her cloak billowed, untouched by wind. The mark on her shoulder was now a blazing sigil, bright enough to cast light across the floor. Thane dropped to one knee. My queen. Lucien stared at him, startled. Wait. What? Thane rose, eyes not leaving her. The seal is broken. The flame has chosen. She is not heir. She is sovereign. Elara looked at her hands. The flame curled around her fingers like silk. It obeyed her without thought, without fear. She turned to Lucien. I know everything now. What the flame is. What it wants. What it needs. He approached cautiously. And what do you want? She met his gaze, and for a moment, he feared the answer. But she smiled, warm and real, and took his hand. You. At my side. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Always. Thane walked to the broken throne and drew a line of glowing symbols across the floor. They shimmered, then faded. We don't have long, he said. Kale's forces are gathering. The queen is likely en route already. Lucien tightened his grip on Elara's hand. Then we bring the fight to them? No, Elara said. Her voice echoed through the keep, not loud, but resonant, like the flame itself spoke with her tongue. We end it here. Over the next day, they prepared the throne keep for war. Thane summoned ancient defenses buried beneath the city, wards made of living fire, spirits of Valari warriors long lost, elemental remnants of old gods sealed within stone. Elara walked through each chamber, reawakening what had been dormant. Her power filled the city, cleansing the rot, shattering the bone-rot corruption left behind. Lucien watched her with awe and a growing fear. Not fear of her power, but of what it might cost. That night, beneath the broken stars, he found her standing alone on the outer wall, staring into the horizon. "They're coming," she whispered. He nodded. "Thane says we may be outnumbered." She didn't look at him. "We are." He stepped closer. "Then we run." She turned sharply. "No. This is our city. Our blood. If we leave it, then we leave the world to burn." Lucien touched her face gently. "Then don't leave me. Whatever happens, don't shut me out." She closed her eyes, leaning into his hand. "You're the only reason I haven't disappeared into the flame already." And in that quiet moment, she kissed him, not with urgency, but with certainty. They stayed like that until the first horn blew. A deep, bone-carving sound from the valley beyond the walls. Thane appeared on the ramparts, eyes glowing. "They're here." Elara stepped forward. The wind swirled around her, carrying her cloak like wings. Lucien drew his sword. Thane unsheathed his star-forged blade. And Elara, standing atop the ruins of a forgotten empire, lifted her hands. Flame burst from her palms and carved a path into the sky. It did not call for mercy. It called for judgment. Section 36. The Siege of Varithka. The first wave came at dawn. Black shapes surged from the forested ridge beyond the ruins, hybrids, vampire thralls, creatures twisted by old pacts and darker magics. At the center of them all, Kale stood like a blade among shadows, his armor scorched from their last encounter, his eyes burning with the hunger of unfinished war. Behind him, drifting like a wraith, was her, the vampire queen. She didn't walk, she glided, barefoot on dead leaves and stone. The sky dimmed above her. Her crown of thorns pulsed with magic older than even Thane remembered. From the ramparts of the keep, Elara watched them come. She stood tall, wrapped in flame-forged armor. Not heavy alive. The fire did not sit on her skin. It grew from it. Her hair burned like a comet, her eyes molten with gold and memory. Lucien stood at her right, sword bare, now infused with glyphs she had etched herself. It sang when he moved. The flame knew him now, trusted him. Thane stood at her left, his wings spread wide, armor blazing like a star descended from the heavens. Elara raised her hand. And the fire answered. It didn't roar. It rose like a god waking from sleep. The walls of the keep flared with light. The glyphs she had reawakened surged through the stone like veins. Statues of her ancestors opened their eyes. The very city woke up. And then, the battle began. Kale struck first. A cry of fury and longing that shattered the silence. He led the charge, faster than lightning, his claws dragging molten furrows through the stone as he came. The hybrids followed. Teeth bared, blades raised. Elara lifted both hands. Let them burn. The earth cracked. Flame shot up from the broken ground, wrapping around the keep in a defensive cyclone. The first wave hit the wall and was incinerated. But Kale didn't stop. He leapt through the fire, ignoring the searing pain, and crashed into the gates with brute strength. Lucien met him head-on. Steel clashed. Claws met flame. You're too late, Kale hissed, fangs bared. You think you can hold her back? Lucien blocked a strike barely. I'm not holding her back. I'm with her. Meanwhile, the queen began her slow approach. She didn't fight like the others. She spoke. Words that shouldn't exist. Words that turned stone to sand, that twisted flame into ice. Elara turned, eyes narrowing. Thane with me. They descended into the heart of the keep, where the throne room pulsed with raw power. The queen stepped through the fire as if it bowed to her. Elara Valari, she cooed. You wear the crown well. But you were not meant to hold it. Elara raised her hand. Flame danced from her fingertips. Then take it from me. The queen smiled. Gladly. She vanished. Reappeared behind Elara, claws slicing. Thane blocked her, his star-forged blade cutting sparks across the queen's arm. You'll not touch her. But the queen was fast, impossibly so. She darted around them like a specter, casting shadows, twisting the air. Elara spun, fire trailing from her fingertips like ribbons. She caught the queen mid-lunge and blasted her with white gold flame. The queen screamed. But not in pain. In rage. "You dare use Aelitha's flame against me?" she shrieked. "I was there when the pact was forged. I offered the blood that sealed it." Elara's eyes widened. You were Valari?" The queen smiled through the fire, her skin charring and healing instantly. "I was. Until the flame chose her over me. Until I was cast out for what I became. And then, she struck." A wave of shadow magic surged toward Elara. Thane jumped in front and screamed. The shadow pierced his armor, his wings folding in agony as he collapsed. "Thane!" Elara caught him before he hit the floor. Blood, silver and glowing, poured from the wound in his chest. He looked up at her, breath ragged. Don't let her take the flame." Elara stood, eyes burning with tears and fury. "You wanted a queen," she said, turning to the queen. "You got one." And then she let go. The flame inside her burst free, no longer confined to her body, her thoughts, her fears. It filled the chamber. The keep. The city. Statues came to life. Walls rebuilt themselves in fire. The throne cracked open, revealing the true heart of the seal, a molten crown forged from the memory of gods. And Elara took it, placed it on her head. The queen faltered. "No." Elara raised her hands. "You do not rule the flame. I am the flame." She cast the fire like a tidal wave. And the queen screamed one final time, before vanishing in a pillar of white gold light. Outside, the battle turned. The thralls fell to ash. The hybrids fled. Kale stumbled, feeling the queen's power vanish like a snuffed candle. Lucien dropped him with a single punch. She chose her fate. Kale looked up at the sky, where a woman crowned in fire now stood at the edge of the keep, her flame lighting the world. She chose us all. Section 37. The Queen Without Mercy. The battle was over. But nothing was quiet. The ruins of Varithka breathed like a creature in mourning, its ancient stones cracking under the weight of centuries in flame. The ash still fell, not like snow, but like memory, soft and bitter. Elara stood on the highest balcony of the keep, the flames still coiled around her limbs, her crown floating above her head like a halo made of living gold. But she didn't feel triumphant. She felt hollow. Lucien approached silently, his face smudged with soot, blood still drying on his jawline. "You're hurt," Elara said softly. He shook his head. "Not really." They stood in silence for a moment. Below, the battlefield smoked. Burned bodies littered the glass-laced valley. Many were monsters. Some were not. He looked at her, really looked. "You did it." "No," her voice was barely a whisper. "We did." She turned, and something flickered in her eyes. Grief. Lucien followed her gaze. At the base of the throne, Thane's body lay shrouded in silver fire, unmoving. He had given everything. The Valari's last sentinel. The first to kneel. The only one who knew what she had truly become. Lucien placed a hand on her back. "He chose this. I didn't want him to. No one wants to be the last." But he knew what mattered. She nodded, but said nothing more. Later, Kale was brought before her. He was chained in obsidian links forged from the keep's heart. He knelt, bruised, bloodied, but not broken. His head was bowed. Elara sat on the broken throne, fire curling around her ankles like loyal beasts. Lucien stood beside her, arms crossed. Kale raised his eyes slowly. "So, it ends like this." "No," Elara said. "It ends when you decide what comes next." He blinked, surprised. "You killed my people," she said. "Hunted me. Lied. Manipulated. Tried to hand me over to something that would have consumed everything I am. And yet," Kale said, bitter, "you hesitate." She leaned forward slightly. "I don't hesitate. I choose. That's what separates me from monsters like her." The queen's name didn't need to be spoken. Kale looked down. "So what then? Mercy? You offer me forgiveness." "No," Elara said, her tone hardening. "You live. But you live serving the flame you tried to break." His brow furrowed. "You'll lead the rebuilding of what was lost. You'll carry the name Valari in the world again, not as a warlord. As a witness." Kale let out a broken laugh. You would trust me to walk free? Lucien's voice was cold steel. She didn't say free. A glyph ignited beneath Kale's knees, a bond seal. Ancient. Binding. Final. You'll never lift a weapon in hatred again, Elara said. If you do, the fire will take you from the inside out. Kale winced as the magic bit into his skin. But then, he bowed. Not in defiance. In submission. As you command, Queen of Flame. That night, the sky finally cleared. Elara stood on the tower's edge, watching the stars reappear one by one. Lucien came to her side. They didn't speak. Not right away. Then he said, "You know this isn't over." She nodded. There are still others. Powers that slept deeper than even the Queen. I felt them stir when the seal broke. And you'll face them? She turned to him. We will. Lucien smiled, just a little. Then I'll be right here. In the fire. With you. She leaned into him, the weight of the crown still hovering above her head. But her flame was steady. She had been hunted. Chosen. Burned. And now she had risen. Section 38, The Ashen Path. Days passed. Maybe weeks. Time flowed differently now in Varithka. As if the city itself were uncertain how to count the days without war. The fires no longer burned with rage. They flickered calmly in braziers relit by Elara's will. The shattered halls of the Throne Keep had begun to restore themselves, slowly, the ancient glyphs knitting through broken stone, regrowing like living veins. Elara walked the rebuilt corridors in silence each morning, her hands brushing the black glass walls that now pulsed faintly with golden light. But every moment of peace was a reminder. This was not an ending. It was an interlude. Kale had kept his vow. He wore no crown now. No blades. The obsidian chain tattooed around his wrist glowed when his rage flared and vanished when he buried it. He labored among the surviving soldiers. Directed the rebuilding of bridges, cleared the broken towers, carved away rot and bone left by the Queen's influence. He did not speak much. But he watched Elara, always with a weight in his gaze. Guilt. Respect. Something heavier. Lucien did not like it. I still don't trust him, he muttered one night as they stood on the upper wall, overlooking the newly lit streets. I don't expect you to, Elara said, sipping from a carved glass of fire fruit wine. I barely trust myself with him. Lucien looked at her sharply. You're not still. She smiled. No, but he carries pieces of my past. I don't think I'll ever stop feeling those echoes. Lucien relaxed slightly. Just don't forget who caught you when the fire nearly took you. I won't. She leaned against him. I couldn't. Then, one night, the Hollowborn priest came. No one saw him arrive. The guards did not see him pass. The wards did not ring. He simply stood at the base of the Throne Keep as the moon dipped low, his robe stitched from smoke and salt, his eyes glowing an unnatural blue. Elara descended the stairs alone to meet him. He bowed, creaking like old wood. You have broken the seal. The fire remembers its name again. Elara held back the rising flame in her palm. I'm not in the mood for riddles. The priest didn't flinch. Then I will speak clearly. You have awakened something beneath the fire. Her pulse jumped. What do you mean? The flame was sealed, yes. But beneath it, in the deepest dark, was something even the Volari feared. Something the gods feared. He looked up. His eyes were hollow wells of cold light. The first flame was not alone. Silence stretched. You're lying. The priest stepped forward. There is a second flame. Not of creation. Of unmaking. It saw your light rise, and it opened its eyes for the first time in an age. Elara's voice dropped. Where? In the shattered lands. Beyond the mirror of bones. She had never heard of it. But her blood turned cold. The fire inside her didn't flare. It shrank. The priest bowed again. You will hear its call soon. And when you do, even your fire may not be enough. And just like that, he was gone. No sound. No light. Nothing left but a scorch mark where his feet had stood. Elara did not sleep that night. Lucien found her staring into the still-burning central brazier of the throne room. What did he say? She didn't look at him. That we're not done. You already knew that. This was just the surface, Lucien. The real enemy wasn't the queen. It wasn't Kale. It wasn't even the Hollowborn. She turned. Her voice was hollow. It's what's beneath everything. Section 39. The Path of Unmaking. The next morning, the keep stirred with a nervous energy. Rumors of the Hollowborn priest's visit had spread like wildfire. No one saw him arrive. No one saw him leave. But everyone felt the shift in Elara. She moved with quiet purpose now. She met with Lucien, Kale, the surviving Valari sympathizers, brief, clipped conversations. Orders issued. Maps unfurled. Old, dangerous names spoken. One name above all, the Mirror of Bones. A wasteland beyond charted territory. North of the last dead forest. East of the jagged sea cliffs where even the Hollowborn refused to tread. A place where gods were said to have died screaming. A place where the second flame waited. Lucien joined her in the strategy chamber, maps scattered around them, a globe half-lit by firelight. He'd heard enough not to question her urgency, but he still didn't like it. "You're saying there's something beneath the first flame?" he asked. "A second source? One we never knew existed?" Elara nodded. "It's not just a source. It's the inversion. The shadow of the flame. The other half." Lucien frowned. "The flame creates this thing. It unravels." Her voice trembled, just slightly. "It doesn't burn. It erases." He leaned forward. "And you're going there?" She looked up. "I have to. If it's waking up, if it's been watching us since the seal broke." Lucien nodded grimly. "Then it won't stay dormant for long." Elara looked back down at the map, her finger tracing the jagged region marked in blood-red ink. "The Mirror of Bones. That's where I go next. And I'm going with you." She didn't argue. Not this time. That night, the council gathered for the first time since the battle. Not nobles, those were gone. What remained were warriors, mystics, former enemies, and a few new faces called by the flame from faraway lands. Elara stood at the center of them, not in royal robes, but in armor forged from the very throne she'd claimed. Her crown hovered above her, flickering, radiant, and ever-shifting, neither burden nor trophy, but warning. "I do not ask your permission," she said. "I ask your trust. Something stirs beneath what we've uncovered. I go to meet it before it rises." Kale stood from the shadows, arms folded. "You'll be outnumbered. The second flame won't fight fair. Nothing worth facing ever does." One of the council members, a seer from the southern cliffs, stepped forward with a voice like breaking stone. "If you fail," Elara nodded, "then you'll know. You'll feel it. The stars will go dark one by one." Silence settled over the chamber. Then the seer knelt. Then let the flame walk into the dark and return brighter. Others followed, kneeling. One by one. Even Kale, eyes unreadable, dropped to one knee. Lucien didn't kneel. He stepped beside her. "I don't follow behind you," he said softly. "I walk with you." She smiled, and the flame in the room burned warmer. As dawn broke, the gates of Varithka opened. Elara stood at the head of a small caravan, Lucien, Kale, two elite warriors, and a seer who claimed to have once dreamed the second flame's shape. Above them, the sky stretched vast and gray, no longer corrupted, but not yet healed. She turned one last time to the throne atop the keep. The city she'd saved. The name she now wore. Valari. And then she walked. North. Toward the mirror. Toward the dark heart of the flame. Toward the place where gods had once fallen and where she might yet rise higher still. Section 40. The mirror, the flame, the choice. They reached the edge of the Mirror of Bones after 7 days of silence. The world changed the moment they crossed the last ridge. Color drained from the sky. Trees turned to pale, petrified shapes. The air lost its temperature, not cold, not warm. Just empty. Bones littered the ground. Not animal. Not entirely human. Things with too many limbs. Too many mouths. Some fossilized mid-scream. The seer wept the moment her boots touched the soil. "It remembers," she whispered. "And it wants us to forget." Lucien drew closer to Elara. "Are you sure it's here?" "I don't feel it," she whispered. "That's how I know." Because the flame screamed at her to run. On the 5th night, the dreams began. Not nightmares. Not visions. Just nothing. Waking up blank. Forgetting names. Faces. Her own reflection in the river had no eyes. Kale nearly turned back. The warriors grew silent. Even Lucien. He woke one morning and forgot her name for 5 full seconds. Elara held him. Anchored him with flame. She didn't speak it aloud, but the truth had become clear. They had crossed into the space beneath existence. Not death. Not dream. The shadow cast by the flame. On the 7th day, they reached the center. A field of obsidian. Shattered like a mirror dropped from the heavens. Floating above it, a tear in the air. A wound in the world. And within it, fire. But not like hers. Not gold. Not red. Not white. Black. A black flame, flickering upside down, casting no light. Lucien shuddered. That's it. That's the second flame. Elara stepped forward. She felt it watching. Felt it offering. Power beyond control. Power beyond names. The unmaking of every lie, every illusion. It whispered without words. You were forged. I am truth. Come closer and become free. Her feet moved. Kale stepped to her side. Don't touch it. Elara shook her head. I wasn't going to. I had to see it. The black flame pulsed. You were chosen, yes. But by fire that lies. Fire that hides. I will show you the raw shape of the world. The ruin beneath the song. She fell to her knees. Lucien rushed to her side. Elara. She looked at him, and for a moment, she saw nothing. No color in his eyes. No sound in his voice. Only silence. And then, flame. Her flame. It burned brighter, hotter, rising from her chest in a defiant blaze. The black flame recoiled. You would deny me? Elara stood. I would choose. They will betray you. Maybe. They will fear you. They already do. You will be alone. She looked to Lucien. Then to Kale. Then to the warriors who had followed her into hell. No, she said. I'm not. And then, she did something no Valari had ever done. She opened her arms and embraced the black flame. Not to accept. To seal. To balance. Her fire met its shadow, and the air exploded. Light and dark spiraled into a perfect sphere. A new seal, born not of fear, but choice. She collapsed in Lucien's arms. Her crown flickered, cracked, then reforged itself into a simpler shape. A circlet of fire and dusk. Kale looked on, stunned. You balanced it. Elara opened her eyes. They were no longer just gold. One was flame. One was shadow. I chose, she whispered. That's what the flame was always about. Not destruction. Not power. Choice. They returned weeks later. Varethka stood taller. Brighter. Wiser. Elara sat once more upon the throne. But now the flame no longer flickered in unrest. It respected. Lucien stood beside her always. Kale served, silent but loyal. The world called her queen. Flame-bearer. Balance keeper. But she preferred another name. Elara. Just Elara. The girl who burned. And chose not to consume. The end.